Chapter 1078. The rapid reversal left the God domain cultivators dumbfounded. They felt that if they were to suggest it, they would definitely be beaten half to death. At this moment, they were all trying to guess where Tianyan came from to be able to change the minds of the elders. It was truly unbelievable. They had never seen such a scene before, including the guards. They all wondered if their eyes were playing tricks on them. Were they still their elders? That's for sure. We will strengthen the management in this area in the future. Elder Go Huang nodded his head solemnly. It wasn't to reproduce Tianyan's words, but that they really wanted to do so. It could even be said that they had always done so, but there were still loopholes. With so many people and so many passageways, it was temporarily impossible to completely abide by the rules. Hence they could only implement strict management, or else it would be impossible. Let's not talk about this. Which deity palace will you choose, Earthly Lord Tianyan? Elder Shihong immediately changed the topic. Why don't you join our sword palace? The sword palace is very powerful. You should be a sword user, right? Normally, you would use a sword. Elder Shihong, you guessed wrong. Earthly Lord Tianyan uses a spear, so he wants to join the spear palace. Elder Go Huang laughed at the side. Spear palace? Elder Shihong revealed a disappointed expression. He was from the Sword Palace, so he naturally hoped that Tianyan would join the Sword Palace. Cough cough, elders, I'm sorry. I don't intend to join the Spear Palace, but the deity's palace. Tianyan expressed his intentions. What, the deity's palace? They were dumbfounded. They never expected Tianyan to choose the deity's palace. It wasn't that the deity's palace wasn't good, but it was rather difficult to join. If one didn't possess a type of demon fire, they wouldn't be allowed to join. Yes, this junior intends to join the deity's palace. Is there a problem? Tianyan inquired. There isn't a problem. I didn't expect both of us to be wrong. Elder Go Huang looked at him and laughed. Come to think of it, I do remember that you possess a demon fire. With such a demonic fire, it shouldn't be a problem for him to join the God Creation Palace. So that's the case. No wonder you want to join the God's Forging Palace. Elder Shihong was filled with disappointment. That's right. What kind of people are allowed to enter that special divine palace? Or is it really that bad? Tianyan was a little curious about that special divine palace. Elder Go Huang's expression was a little awkward, but he still nodded and said, It's indeed quite bad. The resources in all aspects are quite poor, mainly because it's too unorthodox. We can't take care of too many unorthodox cultivators. The Heavenly Spring Divine Realm was strong, but it didn't mean that it had all kinds of resources. Some unorthodox cultivators did not have the corresponding martial arts or resources, so they could only pile up together. In such a chaotic place, the environment was naturally not too good. It seems that if we go in, we will never be able to make a comeback? Tianyan said indifferently. That's not true. If you perform well, we will also nurture you vigorously and think of ways to get you the corresponding martial arts, Elder Go Huang said. Although that was the case, it was rather difficult to enter in the early stages, and it was rather difficult to make a comeback. Tianyan did not say much in this aspect, and immediately headed for the teleportation array of the God's Forging Palace. The other Fan Yu cultivators also chose the divine palace that they wanted. Before they left, they all thanked Tianyan. If it wasn't for his resistance, they would really have to join the special divine palace. Earth Lord Tianyan, once you have stabilized, come and find me. I will bring you to the heaven-stealing divine ground to fulfill the promise we made previously, Elder Go Huang instructed. No problem. Tianyan nodded. Of course, he knew about the heaven-stealing divine ground. He heard that it was a good cultivation holy land. He wanted to go and see what was going on. Perhaps it would be of great help to him. After he stepped into the teleportation array, he quickly disappeared. The two elders looked at each other. My face is really going to be lost. I have to apologize to a junior. Elder Shihong shook his head and felt very helpless. It's nothing. You saw the recording disc. This kid is very strong. And he doesn't look like a reincarnated soul. I think his master is definitely very terrifying. He might be an extremely strong divine monarch, or maybe even an Empyrean. Elder Go Huang said. A heavenly master will let his disciple come here? Elder Shihong shook his head. This is training. Who can say for sure? Elder Go Huang shook his head and said, even if he isn't the disciple of a heavenly master, he will definitely have a lot of opportunities. In short, it is a good idea to let him train those kids. This way, we will have a greater chance of taking over the new celestial territory. The two of them looked at each other and saw their burning gazes. It was as if they had the same goal. Yi Tianyan didn't know that he was a shit-stirrer. The experts in the celestial territory were definitely extremely arrogant. Especially the experts who looked down on Fan Yu. Even if the rules forbade discrimination, they would still discriminate against them. This was no longer something that could be simply said. The thoughts in one's heart couldn't be changed. With Yi Tianyan's appearance, the heavenly spring celestial territory would definitely become lively. Hence, Elder Shihong and the rest chose to make him stay. After all, there were very few cultivators in the mortal realm who had such powerful strength. If it was a strong cultivator from the celestial territory, although he could also suppress those arrogant experts, he wouldn't be able to beat them up as easily as a cultivator from Fan Yu. In the blink of an eye, Yi Tianyan was teleported to the God Creation Palace. As soon as he arrived, a scorching sensation immediately assaulted him from all directions, making him feel a little hot. The place he was in now was a temple. When he walked out, the outside was like a furnace. He could even feel the terrifyingly high temperature coming from below him. There were many plants around him, but they were all fiery red. They were all fire-type plants that could withstand such high temperatures. Ordinary trees would probably wither in a short while. Other than that, there were all kinds of fiery rocks everywhere. They all contained shocking fire energy. When the appraisal eye scanned over, not to mention the surface, even the planet beneath his feet was mostly made of fiery rocks. It was no wonder that the God Creation Palace was built here. With such a high temperature, he would definitely be able to forge decent weapons. Yi Tianyan chose this place to strengthen his forging ability. He wanted to forge a weapon that was extremely suitable for himself. Although he could obtain decent weapons every time he killed an enemy, the weapons he forged were the strongest and most suitable for him. Chapter 1079. When Yi Tianyan walked out of the teleportation temple, there weren't any guards blocking him outside. In fact, he had already been inspected, so he didn't need to go through it again. Looking up, there was a row of temples of different heights in front of him. They seemed to wrap up the entire planet, and they stretched on endlessly without an end in sight. Although there was no end, there was a gate right in front of him. There were guards patrolling the city walls, vigilantly watching the surroundings. Yi Tianyan could see cultivators flying over from time to time. When they approached the gate, they would choose to land and enter through the gate. Regardless of whether it was the God domain or the forces in Fan Yu, flying was prohibited for most of them. In these important regions, flying was absolutely prohibited to prevent accidents from happening. For example, if someone made a huge mistake and tried to escape, they would definitely fly. Once they saw someone trying to escape by flying, they would immediately be stopped. If they flew casually, they wouldn't be able to easily control the situation. Of course, the most important thing was respect. Apart from elders and deacons, no one else was allowed to fly. This was the rule. This rule applied to most of the important regions. Even in Yi Tianyan's imperial capital, flying was prohibited, so one could only move around by walking. This was for the convenience of management. The other cities didn't need to prohibit flying, so there wouldn't be any disturbances. When he approached, the guards immediately stopped him and questioned, "Identity token." Yi Tianyan took out the identity token and handed it over. After checking it, they nodded and immediately let him in. The degree of strictness wasn't considered high. After all, the identity of those who could enter this place had been verified, so there wasn't a need to be especially strict. Although it wasn't strict, they still needed to be verified. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to enter. After entering, it was like a city. People came and went, and it didn't look like a divine palace specially set up for disciples. In fact, it was a huge city. Isn't this a city? Yi Tianyan was stunned. It was different from what he had seen before. As he carefully observed his surroundings, He understood the meaning behind his actions. There were shops all around, selling all kinds of forging materials. The quality was different, and the prices were also different. The currency was mainly star stones or could be replaced with other things. With a single glance, one could tell that they were blacksmiths. As for whether they were divine craftsmen or not, that was another matter. Divine craftsmen were existences that could truly forge divine weapons and above. Blacksmiths could only forge weapons that were divine artifacts. However, this was not the case here. There were people with high and low cultivation levels. Although there were countless experts in Grade 2 god domains, it did not mean that there were no weak points. There were many cultivators who were born and raised in Grade 2 god domains. Their cultivation was not high, and some of them were just as lacking in talent. However, because of this, they discriminated against Fan-Yu's cultivators. Even if they were inferior to Fan-Yu's practitioners from head to toe, they still viewed themselves as superior. This was like a crown prince who did not know how to wash clothes or cook, and could not even handle the affairs of the court well, but could still be incomparably arrogant and look down on everyone. Fortunately, there shouldn't be many people like this. Only those geniuses would have such a feeling. Along the way, Itianyan saw many new materials. This place was really lively. However, the most lively place was the God Palace at the very front. A group of people formed a long queue as though they wanted to enter something. Itianyan walked over and saw everyone registering. After handing over a token and paying a certain amount of star stones, they could enter for the assessment. You want to join the God Creation Palace, right? Hurry up and line up at the back. When the cultivators in the queue saw him, they immediately waved their hands at the back. They looked very familiar, and it was obvious that they had done this many times. Many people wanted to see what was going on, and wanted to line up to enter. Some even wanted to cut the queue. However, these people had to go back and line up obediently. All of you want to join the God Creation Palace? Itianyan was dumbfounded. Wasn't it said that the recruitment of disciples was very strict? There were so many people in the queue, and they all had demonic flames? Isn't that obvious? If we don't join the God Creation Palace, are we just here to enjoy the scenery? That's right. If you want to join the God Creation Palace, go to the back and line up. One look and you can tell that you are new and don't know the rules. Isn't it normal to not know the rules? There are always newcomers who want to join the God Creation Palace. But is it so easy to join the God Creation Palace? There are simply too many people. I wonder how many people will be eliminated this time. This is too cruel. Itianyan took a glance at them. Their cultivation was around the Starry Lord level, which was not very high. As for those who did not have demonic flames in their bodies, fire-attributed constitutions were fine. Some had special fire-attributed constitutions, such as the Fire Dragon Constitution. All of these were enough to satisfy the standards of blacksmiths. It was obvious that these people were not at the level of Inner Hall disciples. They were most likely related to the odd-job types. But even the odd-job types required a very high standard of odd-job skills. Itianyan looked up. If he were to line up one by one, wouldn't he be a fool? It seemed like he would not even get a chance if he did not line up for a few days and nights. Most importantly, he was not here to join the odd job group, but to join the God Creation Palace. Brother, come to my side. I have a spot here. At this moment, someone waved at Itianyan. Itianyan turned his head, and realized that he did not know the person who waved at him at all. However, there was something special about him. He was a human. It seemed like they were of the same race and would take special care of him. What are you doing? Letting someone cut the queue? Someone immediately complained angrily. So what if I let someone cut the queue? Didn't you let someone cut the queue previously? Didn't someone cut the queue in front of me as well? What's wrong with me cutting a spot for my friend? The human brother retorted. We can cut the queue, but you can't let anyone cut the queue. If you want him to come in you can, but you better get lost. That's right. Humans with such mediocre abilities want to join the God Creation Palace. They must be daydreaming. That's right. This is a waste of a spot. Letting you line up here is already benevolent. Originally, he thought that the rejection would be lesser. Who knew that since they were both born in the God domain, It would be the issue of race again. This made him want to vomit blood. Tianyan was already used to it. There's no need for that. I won't cut the queue. You can just line up. Tianyan smiled and nodded. This kid looked like a decent person. Brother, there's no need to be so polite. Hurry up and come over. Don't be afraid of them. They cut the queue even more, so I'll let you come alone. The youth waved his hand and gestured. There's really no need for that. Tianyan waved his hand. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate the gesture, but he didn't want to join the odd job group. He wanted to see how he could enter and register. It wasn't a good idea to just line up like a fool. Chapter 1080. Since Tianyan refused to queue up, the person could only give up. The cultivators at the side started to mock him. He thinks that your queue is too long, and wants to see if there's a place in front where he can cut the queue. You little brat, just go and queue up at the back. You're an eyesore standing here. There are no humans in front. Don't even think about cutting the queue. It's easy to cut the queue. Come here. I'll let you cut the queue for just 100 star stones. 100 star stones? Isn't that too much? It only costs 10 star stones to register. Is it the same? If you want to register faster, you have to pay the price. They started to mock him. Those at the front even offered a high price for Tianyan to cut the queue. They felt that Tianyan wanted to queue faster, and that was why he didn't choose to queue with his clansmen. This action undoubtedly hurt the clansman who had to take care of Tianyan. He was also a little embarrassed. He was doing this out of kindness, but Tianyan didn't appreciate it. Brother, thank you very much. However, I'm not here to register, so it's meaningless to me. Tianyan thanked the youth. When he looked carefully, he realized that there was a reception in front of him. There was no one there, and a person was sitting there, looking very bored, as if waiting for something. His eyes lit up, and he walked forward. The cultivators at the side saw him, and were puzzled. That brat, he can't be thinking of registering over there, right? Seems like it. Isn't that place recruiting inner hall disciples? The requirements are very strict. Did that brat meet the requirements? Meet the requirements, my ass. How long has it been since anyone has met the requirements? He's probably new and doesn't know the rules here. That's right. He must be new and doesn't know the rules. He's going to make a fool of himself. They all laughed. This kind of situation wasn't rare. Newcomers came over and saw that there was no one else in the queue, so they came over to queue up. Who knew that the requirements were very strict? Not to mention meeting the requirements. He couldn't even meet the most basic requirements. Tianyan came in front of the deacon and said, I'm here to join the God Creation Palace. As he spoke, he handed over his identity token. The other party casually took it and examined it. Champion of the Ascension Battle of the Gods, possessor of the demonic fire, failed. What? The champion of the domain of the gods, domain of the ascending heavens, also has a demonic flame? He suddenly bounced up, and his voice was so loud that it startled everyone in the queue. That's right. Is there a problem? Tianyan said calmly. Do I pass? Qualified. Absolutely qualified. Please come with me. This deacon was extremely excited. He could finally recruit someone. No one had come for a long time. He really wanted to die. Can you bring a friend with you? Of course, he won't be taking the inner hall test with me. He will be taking the ordinary test. As he spoke, he pointed at the young man who had helped him earlier. At this moment, all the cultivators in the queue were stunned, including the young man who was pointed at. The deacon glanced at him and nodded. Come over, I'll bring you in. It's on the way anyway. This sudden situation made the cultivator's eyes light up, and he quickly ran towards Tianyan. His original dissatisfaction with Tianyan immediately disappeared. Immediately, the deacon brought the two of them in. The guards in front didn't even stop them. With the deacon leading the way, they naturally wouldn't stop them. What's going on? That kid has the demonic fire? That's right. I heard that he's the champion of the Ascension Battle of the Gods? What the hell? There hasn't been a single person signing up in 100 years. Why is he here this time? Damn it, we don't even have to queue. The key is that the deacon is recommending us. The passing rate will definitely be higher. All of them were regretting. If they had treated Yi Tianyan better, it would definitely be their turn. Now all they had to think about was whether Yi Tianyan would take revenge on them. When the time came and they became disciples, they would have the power to kill. As odd job workers, they could be easily kicked out of this place. At that time, they would really want to cry but no tears would come out. The originally mocking expressions had now turned bitter. It was worse than eating a fly. At the same time, Yi Tianyan followed the deacon forward. Behind him was the slightly uneasy young man. He was really nervous and didn't know what to say. Relax, there's no need to be so nervous. This way, there's no need to queue. Yi Tianyan stretched out his hand and patted the young man's shoulder, indicating that he shouldn't be so nervous. The young man wiped his sweat and nodded. Brother, thank you for bringing me in. I didn't expect you to have the qualifications to sign up here. I was wrong. I thought you really felt that the queue was too long and you didn't want to join my side. It's okay. Work hard and you will definitely have a foothold here in the future. After saying that, he took out a low-grade reincarnation level weapon and stuffed it into the young man's hand. This is a gift for you. Thank you for your kindness just now. This is a low-grade reincarnation level weapon. It's too precious. I can't accept it. The young man's hands were trembling. To him, this was an extremely precious treasure. Accept it. Work hard. Yi Tianyan patted the young man's shoulder. The deacon at the side glanced at him and said, We're here. You can directly go in and sign up. As for whether you will be hired, that will depend on your own ability. The young man nodded heavily and bowed deeply to Yi Tianyan. Thank you, brother. In the future, when I am successful, I will definitely repay you. After saying that, he took the weapon and ran to sign up. With a good foundation, he could walk more steadily. Thus, he chose to accept the weapon and didn't refuse anymore. Subsequently, Yi Tianyan followed the deacon and continued walking forward. As he walked, he asked, May I ask why there are so few people signing up here? The conditions of the god's palace are so harsh. Even those with demon fire might not be hired. Thus, there are very few people signing up. There are already fewer people with demon fire to begin with, so it is even more difficult to sign up. The deacon was very helpless. Be it my place or the other passageways, there are fewer people. Those with demon fire aren't everywhere on the streets, so it's not easy to find them. If he couldn't find anyone, he wouldn't be able to obtain any benefits. How could he not be anxious? Yi Tianyan nodded. Demon fire was already very rare and basically 1 in a million. Furthermore, there was the Elixir Refinement Palace to recruit people. Those with demon fire could go to the Elixir Refinement Palace, which caused the number of people to decrease. In terms of practicality, the Elixir Refinement Palace had more people. After all, weapons were ultimately external objects. If one could refine a good elixir, consuming it could increase one's cultivation, which was obviously more important. Fortunately, you came. Otherwise, I would have to be punished. The deacon said agitatedly, Please be selected as a disciple. Only then will I get some benefits. Chapter 1081. Under the guidance of the warden, they walked forward. The warden seemed to have not spoken for hundreds of years as he kept chatting with him. What the deacon said was basically complaining about the things here, complaining about one thing after another. He complained about all the problems in the God Creation Palace, which made Yi Tianyan feel like his head was about to explode. However, he obtained a lot of useful information, which was that the requirements were extremely harsh. The demon fire was only the most basic requirement, and other abilities were also needed. Therefore, it was already pretty good if 1 out of 10 people who came to participate in the disciple selection was accepted. It was obvious how harsh the requirements were. It was already very difficult to have the demon fire, and they still had to choose disciples from those who possessed the demon fire. It was extremely harsh. If it were any other faction, they would be fine with the demon fire. They could take their time and not be so harsh. However, the God Creation Palace was different. It had to be extremely strict. Just having the demon fire wasn't enough. They also needed a stable foundation. For example, if one's comprehension in forging was too poor, they wouldn't be accepted as a disciple. If one wasn't meticulous enough, they wouldn't be accepted as a disciple either. The requirements for selecting disciples were getting harsher and harsher. The key was that the disciples here were discriminated against. No matter who it was, once they joined, they would take turns to make things difficult. Even if they passed, they would be chased away. Therefore, the God Creation Palace had fewer and fewer people. On the other hand, the Elixir Refinement Palace kept accepting disciples to strengthen itself. This was the result of the management's arrogance and indulgence, which led to such a situation. Why do I feel like I've entered the Black Palace? Tianyun looked at the warden who was leading the way and asked, "Can I join somewhere else?" "How can you? You're already here. If you really can't join, you can join other palaces." How could the warden let Tianyun escape? As long as he brought someone in, he would benefit. Whether he succeeded or not, he would still benefit. If he succeeded, the benefits he would obtain would be doubled. Tianyun was dragged by the warden towards the God Refinement Palace in front. This God Refinement Palace was no different from the other palaces. They were all made of firestone. Before they even got close, they could feel the heat waves. If their cultivation was too low, they would really be roasted. "It's here, let's go in." The deacon dragged Tianyun inside. After walking in, what came into view was not a huge formation. Instead, it was completely empty. There was only an old man sitting at the side looking drowsy. It looked very desolate, like a declining family that no one wanted to join. As soon as he entered, the drowsy old man suddenly opened his eyes. A beam of golden light shot out from his eyes and fiercely hit Tianyun's body, as if it wanted to see through him. "Elder Dongyun, this is a disciple who has come to take the entrance test." The deacon walked over eagerly and rubbed his palms together. He has the demonic fire, and he's also the champion of the ascending battle of the deity realm. He's more than qualified to enter the assessment. Divine Domain Ascension Battle's first place? Elder Dongyun widened his eyes and squinted a little. He looked him up and down and said, "A genius from Fan Yu? You even have the demon fire. This is rare. But very good, there's finally something to play with." Elder Dongyun. He rubbed his palms and looked at Elder Dongyun like a child begging for candy. Go, 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 I know what you're thinking. Go and collect your reward." Elder Dongyun waved his hand impatiently. "Many thanks, Elder Dongyun." The deacon's face is full of joy, and he hurriedly turned around and left. When he passed by Tianyun, his eyes showed a bit of pity. "Boy, keep it up, you can do it." After encouraging Tianyun, he quickly left to get the reward. Tianyun frowned. He felt as if he had been sold. Elder Dongyun clapped his hands. Clap, 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 sounds echoed in the refining god temple. Nothing happened after that. It was no different from before. Elder Dongyun walked over with a smile. Seeing his smile, Tianyun felt his blood run cold. He felt as if he was a prey being targeted. There hasn't been a new disciple for about 2 to 3 years. I wonder how your standard is. The previous one was very weak and couldn't even pass the most basic test. Elder Dongyun looked at him and grinned. If you pass our test, not only will you be able to join the God Creation Palace, but we will also nurture you with all our might. We can even give you the right to cultivate in the heaven-pilfering divine land. Basically, as long as we can get it, we will give it to you. The moment he opened his mouth, it was shockingly tempting. It was as though he was saying that as long as he had it, he would give it to him. Tianyun was expressionless. To be able to provide so many benefits meant that it must be an extremely cruel test. From the looks of it, this Elder Dongyun preferred to play with tests. In just a moment, a group of people surged in from outside and quickly made the place lively. Finally, a newcomer. He looks rather young. I wonder what his abilities are like. Hee, let's see if he can pass the test of us senior brothers. It won't be that easy to join. Yo, he's a human? A human that can control demonic fire. He's not simple. I wonder how his standard is and if he can withstand our abuse. Oh no, our test. The ones that surged in weren't the other elders, but some senior brothers and sisters. There weren't many of them, only about a dozen of them. However, the weakest of them was at the 8th Refinement Earth Monarch realm, while the strongest was at the 6th or 7th Refinement Lord of Heaven realm. It could be said that there were many geniuses. They sized up Yi Tianyan with excited faces, as though they had found something fun. Seeing how excited they were, Yi Tianyan's heart sank. It seemed like these people were treating the test as a form of entertainment. However, he didn't see any disdain in their eyes, nor did they look down on him. They wouldn't look down on him just because he was from the human race. They were all excited. Little junior brother. We'll call you little junior brother for the time being. If you join us, we'll give you a gift for our first meeting. If anyone bullies you in the future, just tell us and we'll avenge you. Heh, senior brother High Dragon. Is it really okay for you to say that? What's not good about it? The one from before was scared away by us. If we don't give them something, they won't have the motivation to take the test. All of them started discussing, and their eyes were constantly sizing up Yi Tianyan. Among them, the one that made Yi Tianyan's hair stand on end was an absolute beauty at the side. Her beautiful eyes revealed a burning gaze, and she even licked her lips at him as though she had seen food. Little brother, if you perform well, senior sister will bring you to a fun place. She smiled slightly, and her beauty was enough to topple nations. Chapter 1082. Their enthusiasm made Yi Tianyan feel a little overwhelmed. This was his first time facing these tests, and they were so enthusiastic that he was not used to it. Of course, it was better than being discriminated against. That was even more displeasing. At the very least, they were not disgusting. At most, they were a little more enthusiastic. They did not look like a test, but more like they had found something fun to do. I am here to take the test. Senior brothers and sisters, are you all examiners? Yi Tianyan looked at the dozen people surrounding him. This was his first time seeing such a situation. That's right. Why else do you think we are here? They looked at each other and smiled, a hint of mischief in each other's eyes. Boom. At this time, the door behind him closed, and a loud sound echoed throughout the area. Yi Tianyan turned his head, and saw that his two senior brothers had run to the back and closed the door. What's going on? Yi Tianyan asked curiously. Nothing much, we just don't want others to disturb you. This is a very important test, we cannot be disturbed. That senior brother High Dragon was the eldest. Among all the senior brothers and sisters, his cultivation was the highest, reaching the 7th level of the Lord of Heaven. The second strongest was the senior sister who tempted Yi Tianyan. She was called Senior Sister Fire Lotus, reaching the 6th level of the Lord of Heaven. They all broke through from the 8th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm, not the 9th. However, this was already very strong. After all, the 8th refinement of the Earth Monarch realm was Lord of Heaven. In the first grade God realm, this level was already at the elder level. Here they could only be considered disciples. The difference in treatment was like heaven and earth. Yi Tianyan was speechless. How was this not wanting others to disturb him? They were afraid that he would run away. What is the test content? Yi Tianyan looked at them, as if they have thought about the assessment content hundreds of times, and now they put all of their efforts on him. As for the content, we have already thought about it. We will test you for 10 rounds. One of them jumped out and said, 10 rounds. Yi Tianyan almost vomited blood. 10 rounds at the start? Wasn't this torture? Ahem, don't go overboard. Elder Dongyan walked out and glared at the disciple. He then turned to Yi Tianyan and said with a smile, there are only 3 tests. High Dragon, Fiery Lotus, and I will set the test. Once you pass, you will become a disciple of the God Creation Palace. You must not leave during the process. You can't leave the stage in the middle? If I can't pass, why should I continue? Yi Tianyan was puzzled. Of course. If you can't pass, then skip to the next round. Even if you fail, you will still have the chance to become a disciple, said Elder East Cloud with a smile. There's such a logic? Yi Tianyan was shocked. The rules were really messy. He didn't even need to pass the test to become a disciple. This meant that they would be recruited based on the overall standard, not just one aspect, but all aspects. If there was something special, they would be recruited. If there was nothing special, they would not be recruited at all. As for passing completely, that meant that he had been chosen. Of course, In short, you can't back out in the middle. You must finish our assessment, understand? Their eyes glowed, and they seemed to be unwilling to let him leave. Tianyan felt like a sheep entering a tiger's den. He wondered if he had really come to the wrong place, and if he had to use shift to escape. This assessment won't be life-threatening, right? Asked Tianyan. They looked at each other and actually hesitated. This hesitation meant that their lives were really in danger. Seeing Tianyan's gaze, they smiled embarrassedly. There will be some life-threatening danger. Our assessment will definitely not be that simple. But don't worry, it won't be very dangerous, Senior Brother Hydreigon said with a smile. Tianyan suddenly felt speechless. He could only say, "All right then. Can we start the assessment now?" Yes. They nodded repeatedly. After looking at each other, Elder Eastcloud walked out and said with a smile, "Then I'll be the first to conduct the assessment." After he walked out, he looked at Tianyan and said, "The first round won't be very difficult for you. The first thing to master in artifact refinement is to control fire. If you can't control fire well, everything will be nonsense. Therefore, the first test I'm giving you now is to burn this piece of ice into a thin needle for me." With that said, he raised his hand and threw the piece of ice in front of Tianyan, indicating for him to burn it into a thin needle. Tianyan was instantly stunned. This was simply a freakish test. To burn a piece of ice into a thin needle, the amount of strength needed was not just difficult, it was simply freakishly difficult. The control of strength needed to be very precise. Especially since this piece of ice was very ordinary. It was formed from very ordinary solidified water. This meant that as long as the fire was slightly increased, it would directly burn to death. It might be possible if it was a small burn, but to melt it into a thin needle, the difficulty was rather freakishly difficult. The thin needle was already small enough. Just touching it a little would immediately cause it to completely vaporize. If you can still make a small hole on it, and allow the needle and thread to pass through, I'll reward you with a high-grade reincarnation level treasure. Senior Brother Hydreigon even added a condition at the side, his face full of excitement. Not only him, but everyone else also looked at Tianyan, wanting to see what he would do. Tianyan was instantly speechless. Wasn't this deliberately making things difficult for him? If he used energy to carve it, it would not take more than a second to cut it into a thin needle. But if he changed it to flames, the difficulty would be too great. Isn't this a little too difficult? Tianyan frowned and said, "With your ability to control fire, can all of you reach this step?" He had experience in this area, so of course he knew how difficult it was. If everyone could reach this step, they could be said to be a super master of controlling fire. There are also very few of us who can reach this step, but it's not that there aren't any. Only a strict standard can prove your ability. Senior Brother Hydreigon said very frankly, causing Tianyan to roll his eyes. This was simply making things difficult for him. That's right, this is our excellent standard. Let's see how much you can complete. Elder Eastcloud's words made Tianyan understand something, which was that he did not really need to complete everything. After all, the difficulty was indeed very high. If he could make it very thin, even if it was not a thin needle, it would already be considered very good. Tianyan looked at them and said helplessly, "All right then, I'll give it a try. Don't worry, we will give you 3 chances. After the 3 chances, choose the best one as your result this time," Elder Eastcloud said. Tianyan looked at the piece of ice in front of him, and the corner of his mouth curled into a trace of a smile. To him, this was really too easy. He was just pretending. He believed that his ability to control fire was definitely not weak. Chapter 1083. The senior brothers looked at each other and smiled. They felt that it was interesting to test the newcomer. They seemed to like this kind of thing, and wanted to see how Tianyan solved it. It should be said that they were like judges to see if the newcomer could become their future junior brother. At least the way he looked at Tianyan didn't have the slightest contempt, nor did he look down on him. Just this point alone made Tianyan feel quite comfortable, and did not reject him. They seemed to be quite united and had a good relationship with each other, unlike the other forces which were basically incompatible. Only those with equal status or similar talents could have a topic to talk about. As for those with a bigger gap, they could not be bothered. This kind of atmosphere was quite bad, and was not the environment that Etienne liked. It was different here. The atmosphere felt quite good. Hee, I remember that kid from last time. He burned it to nothing. His fire control is a little too weak, right? It's normal to burn it to nothing. Some people will just have flames, but their fire control is a mess. I remember there was someone with good fire control, but the result was like a stick. It's a little different from a thin needle. I can't even burn it into a thin needle, let alone drill a hole in it. You can't do it, but it doesn't mean that others can't. Senior sister Flaming Lotus can do it. Not to mention a thin needle, she can even burn a hair out. They were discussing while Etienne was preparing for the test. Etienne did not think much. He raised his hand and displayed the white bone fire. The moment this demonic fire appeared, everyone's eyes lit up. The white bone fire was a very good demonic fire, and they nodded. Then Etienne quickly threw the flame on the ice. With a whoosh, the violent flame wrapped around the ice. Almost instantly, the ice was completely covered. Everyone was stunned. So simple and violent. Didn't he burn the ice directly? After a while, the flame quickly disappeared, leaving behind a thin needle. It was similar to a normal needle. In just the blink of an eye, the ice block was burned into needles. His ability to control fire could be said to be terrifying. When everyone saw this, they were immediately dumbfounded. It turned out that they had encountered an expert in playing with fire. To be able to easily burn out fine needles, it was obvious that he was very experienced. Damn it, I'm not seeing things right. This flame control is even better than Senior Sister Fiery Lotus. Bullshit. Senior Sister Huolian can make fine threads that are even thinner than a needle. Alright, you're much stronger than me anyway. They were all shocked by Etienne's move. He had thought that Etienne would fail, but who would have thought that he would succeed in an instant? I almost forgot to punch a hole in it. Etienne smiled and flicked his finger. A small flame flew out, and easily pierced through the head of the needle, completely forming a needle. Then he extended his hand and pushed the thin needle back into Elder Dong Yun's hand. After Elder East Cloud received it, he picked it up and looked at it. He nodded in satisfaction. Looks like this level isn't too difficult for you. It can be said that your ability to control fire is very shocking. Looks like you've practiced a lot of techniques for controlling fire. They were all very satisfied with this and exclaimed in admiration at Etienne's performance. Are all the newcomers so strong now? One of them reached out and slapped his face. It was obvious that he was not as good as Etienne, which was why he did that. That's right. It seems that we're old. After training for so long, we're not as good as a newcomer. How embarrassing. They all shook their heads, feeling like they had been dealt a heavy blow. Their ability to control fire was not even half as good as Etienne's, but they could still join. From this, it could be seen that it was necessary to test one's ability to control fire, but it did not need to be at such a terrifying level. Fire control could be developed slowly in the future, so it was not the most important test here. Etienne immediately noticed this. Since it was the first round, it probably would not be very strict. You're really good, kid. I was just saying it casually, and you really completed it. Senior brother Yulong took the needle and sized it up. He clicked his tongue and said, "Then according to our agreement, I'll give you a high-grade reincarnation level treasure later. You can choose any one of them." This senior brother Yulong was very forthright. He did not go back on his word. However, this was not a big problem for him. With his ability, he could already forge high-grade reincarnation level treasures. There was some difficulty, but he could still forge them. Little brother, your ability to control fire is comparable to mine. Senior Sister Fire Lotus squinted her eyes and smiled sweetly. When we join the God Creation Palace, can you spar with me for a while? Let's talk about it after I join. Etienne wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. These people were really enthusiastic. Ahem, you passed the first round perfectly. It was indeed beyond my expectations. Your foundation is very good. It was a little beyond our expectations. Your ability is not bad. Elder Dong Yin revealed a smile. There are so many disciples here for the assessment. You're considered to be at the forefront. Then, I'll leave the second round to Yulong to set the question. Senior brother Yulong seemed to have waited for a long time. He ran out excitedly and said, I'll set the second round. The content is still fire control. Fire control again? Yi Tianyan was stunned. He had already tried to control fire before, and now he was testing this again. Of course, it's not just simple fire control. Later on, you can forge any weapon or anything else. We'll keep disturbing you. If you can successfully complete this weapon, we'll consider it a pass. How about that? Senior brother Yulong laughed loudly. Everyone looked at each other and smiled. They could see the mischief in each other's eyes. Yi Tianyan immediately knew what these guys were here for. They were here to help disturb him, right? They were really going to do it in a group and disturb him from the side. However, it was unprecedented for them to participate in the assessment as a group. It could be said that they were united as one to help the junior brothers who joined later. That's not a problem. Let's give it a try. Yi Tianyan nodded. He wanted to see how far these people could go. It's good that there's no problem. We'll still give you 3 chances. We'll keep disturbing you. I hope you can maintain your fire control ability and don't be disturbed by us. Senior brother Yulong laughed loudly. The others looked at each other and smiled, as if they were laughing about something. I remember something. When we disturbed that guy previously, he directly exploded his cauldron. Pfft. I almost forgot if you didn't mention it. That was because the disturbance was too much, resulting in the explosion. Chapter 1084. Yi Tianyan didn't say much. He quickly took out a pile of materials and prepared to refine a low-grade reincarnation-grade weapon. He wouldn't choose something with a high difficulty. He just chose something with a normal difficulty. God knows how these guys would interfere with him. Then, he quickly threw out a pile of materials and used the white flame bonfire to melt the materials. He didn't need a furnace to start refining. He didn't need a furnace to refine a weapon. This wasn't difficult for him. This move made them sigh. They felt that Yi Tianyan was really bold. He actually didn't use a furnace. As expected of a first-rate fire control ability, he didn't even need a furnace. If it was me, I wouldn't dare to do this. That's right. Although it's only a low-grade reincarnation-grade weapon, it's still quite difficult without a furnace. They all recognized Yi Tianyan's ability. To dare to do this, he must have excellent fire control ability. They didn't dare to do this, but there were others who dared to do it. When Yi Tianyan was melting, a piece of iron was suddenly thrown into the flames. It quickly mixed with the other materials. Add it in for me. Don't throw it out. Senior martial brother Yulong laughed loudly and added a little seasoning for him. Yi Tianyan was startled. Then he quickly controlled the white flame bonfire to melt the mixed materials. Then he removed the impurities and quickly superimposed it with the already melted materials. With the addition of this material, the entire weapon's material changed. A change in the ratio could easily lead to failure. However, Yi Tianyan's control was quite perfect. He directly removed the impurities, leaving behind the purest thing. At the same time, he threw in a brand new material. This material and the material that senior apprentice brother High Dragon threw in formed a perfect combination. They complemented each other and didn't affect anything. But compared to before, this weapon would have more effects. When the senior apprentice brothers and sisters saw this scene, they all praised him. To be so decisive, it proved that he was quite experienced. If Yi Tianyan didn't add in the new material, this weapon would still have problems. After all, it was impossible to eliminate the negative effects of this material just by relying on the ability to control fire. For example, if he were to throw in an ice stone, he would need to use another material that could withstand the ice stone to successfully refine the weapon. Yi Tianyan quickly found the right materials and controlled them perfectly. There was no doubt that he had a good foundation. Interesting. Then I'll add this. Then someone threw a piece of ore into the melted liquid. Yi Tianyan was quick to react. He quickly wrapped it up, melted it, and threw out new materials to make the perfect mix. I'll throw one too. All of them seemed to think that the matter wasn't too serious, and kept throwing out new materials. This was what they meant by interference. They didn't mean that they were going to beat up Etienne while he was forging. This was no longer a disturbance, but a deliberate attempt to chase people out. The content of their assessment was very rough, but at the same time, it was also a very important foundation. What was being tested now was his ability to adapt, and his ability to control fire. Now, all of them were basically taking turns to throw out ores, special materials, and even spiritual medicine. All of them were dissolved by him one by one and integrated into the pile of materials. He didn't know what he would be able to forge in the end, but he only needed to pay attention to one thing, and that was that he couldn't fail or explode. Even if he forged a brick in the end, it would at least be a brick that could smash someone to death, and not a pile of powder. If the forging failed normally, it would directly explode and turn into a pile of waste materials that couldn't be used at all. In the end, all the spectators threw in a material. Etienne didn't reject any of them, and he couldn't reject any of them. He solved the integration problem perfectly every time. And so far, there hadn't been any major problems. The biggest problem was that he didn't know what kind of weapon he could forge from the big ball of liquid. It looked so mixed, and probably had all kinds of attributes. This kind of weapon was relatively weak. No one could have all the attributes. Being too comprehensive meant being mediocre. Of course, it wasn't a requirement for the weapon to be strong, but for the weapon to be usable. And that was enough. This newbie is really amazing. He's the strongest newbie I've seen so far. He threw out so many materials, and nothing happened to him. That's right. If it were me, I would have failed long ago. He's completely fine. It's watertight. Damn it. Why do I feel more inferior as the test goes on? They couldn't help but scratch their heads. They originally wanted to see how long Etienne could last. Who knew that he would persevere all the way, and nothing happened to him? Condense. Etienne shouted and quickly formed hand seals. The ball of liquid flew up quickly, and under his hands, it was constantly kneaded in the air. Then he fell heavily from the ground. At the same time, he condensed his energy into a giant hammer, and kept smashing it down. He kept smashing the ball of liquid. As there were too many materials, he kept making the materials wider. Then, the shape of an incomparably huge sword gradually appeared in everyone's sight. With so many materials, he could only forge a relatively large weapon. And a huge sword was a good choice. Under his constant hammering, a huge sword was quickly formed. It was flashing all kinds of colors, and looked very strange. This meant that he had fused too many materials. If it were anyone else, it would be a waste of materials. But to be able to fuse them and not explode, it already proved that Etienne's ability was very amazing. Dang. With a crisp sound, Etienne kept the void hammer, and a colorful huge sword appeared in front of everyone. Its grade was not low, and it was almost a mid-grade reincarnation level weapon. There were a lot of mixed materials, but the quality was not low. The materials they threw out were not very precious, but they were not bad either. Usually they wouldn't carry any garbage with them, so the materials they threw out were not bad. Now that they could forge a weapon that was close to a mid-grade reincarnation level weapon, it was definitely shocking. It's done. Etienne threw the huge sword to senior brother Yulong. After senior brother High Dragon received it, he reached out to touch it and said in amazement, "You're really amazing. You managed to forge it perfectly just like that. Just based on your reaction speed alone, your standard can be considered above average among us." Chapter 1085. They could not help but praise the giant sword that Etienne had forged. They were not stingy with their compliments. They were more and more satisfied with Etienne. Even Elder Dongyin was looking at him with admiration. Without a doubt, he was qualified to join the God Creation Palace after passing these 2 rounds. "I wonder if I can pass this round, senior brother Yulong?" Etienne asked with a smile. "If you can't pass this round, then no one in the world can pass it. Be it your control or your ability to adapt, they are both superb." Senior brother Yulong smiled. "We are very satisfied with this. You passed the second round easily and perfectly. Although you performed perfectly in the first 2 rounds, there is still the third round. If you can't pass the third round, it will be more difficult for you to be evaluated. As he spoke, senior brother Yulong looked at senior sister Fire Lotus. Senior sister Fire Lotus was the one who came up with the final test. Yi Tianyan squinted his eyes. He thought that they would hire him without passing the third round. Who knew there was a third round? From their tone, it seemed like the third round was the most important one. Senior sister Fire Lotus walked out and looked at him with a blushing face. She smiled. Little junior brother, you're really capable. I'm more and more attracted to you. She even walked over and drew circles on his chest with her fingertip. It looked rather seductive. Yi Tianyan moved back a little and maintained a distance. He smiled. Senior sister, you're too tempting. I'm afraid I can't control myself. If you can't control yourself, then don't. Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled. It was really like a beautiful fire lotus blooming. It was red in 4 colors and looked rather beautiful. Cough cough. Tell me the content of the third round, Yi Tianyan said. You really don't know how to flirt. Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled. The content of the third round is very simple. Bring this weapon and follow me to the fiery mystic realm to kill demonic beasts to obtain the flame scale. Once you obtain the flame scale, you will pass the round perfectly. Flame scale? Yi Tianyan still had some impression of this item. It was one of the materials used to create high-grade reincarnation-level treasures, and was relatively precious. It was unique to the flame qilin. Generally speaking, there was no need to kill the fire qilin. All one had to do was subdue it and take it away. If he killed it, he wouldn't be able to obtain it in the future. Therefore, they would choose to catch it and peel off a little flame scale from time to time. After resting for a period of time, it would grow back. This was quite cruel, but some places would give it good food and drink, and nurture it as their companion. This way, he didn't even need to subdue it to obtain the flame scales, which would normally fall off. That's right. We have a fiery arcane realm here. There are many materials inside. There's also a flame qilin among them. We'll work together to subdue it and then pluck out its flaming scales, senior sister Huolian said. Sure, no problem. Yi Tianyan nodded and said. It wasn't difficult to subdue the flame qilin. To him, he could suppress it with one punch and knock it out. Then it would be easy to get the scales. Then let's go to the fiery arcane realm now. Senior sister Huolian waved at Yi Tianyan and led him forward. Senior brothers, you're not going? Yi Tianyan looked at them and asked curiously. Why are we going to the fiery arcane realm? We'll wait here for you guys to come back. Senior brother Yulong smiled and said, We have high hopes for you. This time, you must get it back successfully. Yi Tianyan was a little puzzled. He thought that they would come over together to watch. Who knew that they would stay here obediently? This made him feel strange. However, after thinking about it carefully, they were going to get the flaming scales. If a group of people came over, they would scare the flame qilin. After they left, everyone looked at each other and smiled. Then they disappeared on the spot, going somewhere unknown. Under senior sister Huolian's lead, they came to the teleportation entrance of the fiery arcane realm. After explaining to the guard that it was a test, the guard immediately let them pass. They easily arrived at the fiery arcane realm through the teleportation formation. As soon as they arrived, Yi Tianyan felt that the temperature was even hotter than above. Looking around, there were still piles of flaming stones. It was no different from the ones outside. The only difference was that there were volcanoes at the side. There was also a lot of lava rolling on the side, forming rivers of lava. With their cultivation, it would not be a problem for them to fall for a short period of time. It would not cause them much harm. Yi Tianyan glanced to the side. Just as he was about to say something, a figure jumped into his arms. Little junior brother, are we not going to do anything? Senior sister Huolian jumped into his arms. Her beautiful eyes were full of temptation. She was not here to get the flaming scales. She was here to seduce him and do some private things. Luckily, there was no one around. Otherwise, they would have been misunderstood. Senior sister Huolian, what are you doing? Yi Tianyan grabbed her shoulder and pushed her forward. He said in a deep voice, We are here to get the flaming scales. Please behave yourself. Senior sister Huolian was tempting, but he was not interested. He had Shuoyin in his heart. That was enough. Senior Sister Huolian waved her hand and said in a bored tone, "How boring. I think you are quite capable and much stronger than the others. Can't I have some fun?" Senior Sister Huolian, "You are putting me in a difficult position," Yi Tianyan said in a deep voice. "I know. It's a mission. You are so boring." "It's just a flaming scale. I have it here." Senior Sister Huolian took out a flaming scale and waved it in front of him. She smiled and said, "How about it? I have the flaming scale now. You just need to play with me for a while, and let me order you around. This flaming scale is yours. There is no need to look for the fire qilin. It is so hard to find. You might as well take it back. Moreover, I am the supervisor now. No one will think that the flaming scale is on us. You can just say that you took it." Her face was full of temptation. She still had the mission item in her hand. He did not need to look for the fire qilin. He only needed to accompany her. "Not interested. I will get the flaming scale myself." Yi Tianyan did not even bother to look at her. He turned around and walked forward. Senior Sister Huolian's smile deepened as she watched him leave. She followed him and said, "All right, you are so inflexible. But I like inflexible people like you. I will go with you to find the flaming scale. I will not trick you this time." Chapter 1086. With Yi Tianyan's warning, Senior Sister Fire Lotus finally became more obedient. She didn't make any more moves and just followed obediently by the side. Yi Tianyan carefully explored around. There are a lot of demon beasts here. There are also a lot of forging materials. It could be said to be a treasure trove of materials. It should be inside the God Creation Palace and not open to the public. Otherwise, this place would have been full of cultivators. Even though it was slightly dangerous, it was still within an acceptable range. Especially when one wanted good stuff and was unwilling to take risks, it was obviously very unreasonable. As they went deeper, the demon beasts became fewer and fewer. There weren't even any demon beasts around. At the same time, the quality of the materials around them was getting higher and higher, and their numbers were increasing. It wasn't that no one was collecting them, but that this was the territory of a powerful demon beast. We might be in the Flame Qilin's territory. Yi Tianyan turned his head and looked to the side. He could already smell danger. The Flame Qilin was definitely not weak. It was at least above the level of the Lord of Heaven, and it was very powerful. With the Qilin's bloodline, how could it be weak? The Qilin's bloodline was ranked in the top 10. The power that it could unleash was definitely above most of the same level. That's right. We are already in the Flame Qilin's territory. Senior Sister Fire Lotus's expression turned serious, and wasn't as exaggerated as before. Just as she finished her sentence, an angry roar came from the flame forest in front of them. It was like a roar from the underground abyss, and it was frightening. "It's warning us not to get close," Senior Sister Fire Lotus said in a low voice. "If that's the case, let's hurry over. We'll pass if we take the scales." Yi Tianyan nodded, ignored the warning, and ran forward. Senior Sister Fire Lotus followed up with a long whip in her hand. It was very suitable for her character, and it was hot. Roar! Just then, a huge figure jumped out of the flame forest. The first thing that Yi Tianyan felt was the extreme heat, as though it could burn a person. What appeared in front of them was the huge Flame Qilin, shrouded in flames. His entire body was covered in a thick layer of flaming scales, each of which contained an astonishing amount of flame energy. Even those at the level of the Lord of Heaven would not dare to casually touch the flaming scales, for fear of being burned. Of course, Yi Tianyan wasn't worried about this. They didn't need to worry about the flaming scales burning them. Now, they only needed to worry about how to dig out the flaming scales from its body. Flame Qilin, super powerful divine beast, level 5 Lord of Heaven cultivation, possesses super demonic fire power, can burn everything. At the same time, the flaming scales on his body could withstand all damage. The super strong defense was enough to block a fatal attack. 5th stage Lord of Heaven. This Flame Qilin was truly powerful. This was a divine beast. Seeing this divine beast, Yi Tianyan wanted to tame it for his own use. With such a powerful divine beast as a companion, how could he not feel at ease? Roar! The flame Qilin roared at them again and issued a stern warning, signaling them to stay away. Go! Senior Sister Fire Lotus rushed towards the flame Qilin without hesitation, and whipped the long whip in her hand towards the flame Qilin's body. Pa! The whip heavily hit the flame Qilin's body. Such a heavy whip only left a shallow mark on the flame Qilin's body, and the flame Qilin quickly recovered as if nothing had happened. Roar! Senior Sister Fire Lotus's attack thoroughly enraged the flame Qilin. It roared at her, and a huge fireball whizzed towards her. As if the end of the world had come, the huge fireball fell from the sky and enveloped the entire land. Senior Sister Fire Lotus's complexion changed, and she quickly dodged to the side, but her speed was still a bit too slow, and the fireball had already exploded towards her. At this moment, a figure blocked in front of her, and a cold light flickered. Xiao! The huge fireball was split into two halves by a spear. Yi Tianyan grabbed Senior Sister Fire Lotus and fled to the side. Senior Sister Fire Lotus was stunned. She didn't expect that Yi Tianyan would come so quickly, and even penetrate this terrible fireball with a spear. You stay here, I will deal with it. Yi Tianyan motioned her to stay on the side. He alone was enough to deal with this flame Qilin. Wait! Senior Sister Fire Lotus hurriedly stopped him, but Yi Tianyan had already rushed forward alone, and was ready to penetrate this flame Qilin. Seeing Yi Tianyan rushing over, the flame Qilin was stunned, and turned to look at Senior Sister Fire Lotus with a confused look in its big eyes, as if it was asking for some instructions. Senior Sister Fire Lotus pointed at Yi Tianyan and nodded at the same time. Roar! The flame Qilin suddenly went crazy, and aimed at Yi Tianyan, and fiercely spat out several balls of flames. The power of each ball was stronger than the previous one, and directly blocked all of his escape routes. Break! Yi Tianyan's eyes narrowed, and he displayed violent heaven Ju, and a violent power was released along with the spear. It directly penetrated this huge fireball, and easily pierced it into two halves. The next moment, he rushed out of this exploding fireball, and in one fell swoop, he was in front of the flame Qilin, and swung his spear at its body. Under this fierce swing, a bang sound was heard, and the flame Qilin was smashed down from the sky like a fool. Boom! The flame Qilin heavily hit the ground, and a big pit was formed. Yi Tianyan didn't stop, and quickly chased after the flame Qilin, and was ready to launch another fierce attack on the flame Qilin. Wait a minute! At this time, Senior Sister Fire Lotus hurriedly blocked in front of the flame Qilin, and with a big hand in front of it, she said, Little junior brother, don't attack it. What's wrong? Aren't we going to take the flame scale? A faint smile appeared on Yi Tianyan's face, as if he had already seen through some clues. This is our test, and you don't play according to the rules. How can you be so strong? Senior Sister Fire Lotus was very helpless. What do you mean by not playing according to the rules? Yi Tianyan pretended to be suddenly enlightened, and said, Could it be that, in fact, the flame Qilin is actually your companion, and you just found it to test me? Yes, it is to test you. I have to say the content of the last test seems to have failed. At this time, a group of people flew over, and these people were the senior brothers and senior sisters from before, and Elder Dong Yun. They were hiding at the side, and now that they knew that they had been exposed, they could only show themselves. Chapter 1087. The fire Qilin crawled up from the ground, not injured at all. Actually, Yi Tianyan didn't use much strength at all. The spearhead wasn't directly aimed at its body, but smashed down with the spear shaft. Thus, there wasn't much damage to speak of, not even a scratch. At most, it would hurt a little when it smashed down. To the fire Qilin, this was just a scratch, not a big problem. This was all done on purpose by Yi Tianyan. He was just playing along with Senior Sister Fire Lotus's performance. From the moment Senior Sister Fire Lotus entered, he knew that everything was an act. She probably fell for it. Senior Sister Fire Lotus was extremely talented, and he knew her true personality. She definitely wouldn't be so wanton. Everything was a trap, and he just fell for it. Now it was proven that his guess was right. It was all just a test. From the start, Senior Sister Fire Lotus had set a trap for him. She showed interest in him in all aspects, and even tempted him in other aspects. Some couldn't control themselves and were tempted as soon as they entered. Then, everything would be lost. He was very sure that if he fell for it, no matter how perfect his performance was, he wouldn't be chosen as a disciple. Little junior brother, aren't you too strong? You messed up our plan. It wasn't easy for us to think of a trap, but you ruined it. Senior brother High Dragon was a little frustrated as he walked over with a helpless expression. It's fine. At least you resisted the temptation at the start. You didn't choose to hand in the Fire Lotus's scale. You even chose to protect her later. This is already in line with our selection criteria. There shouldn't be a need for the rest of the test. Elder East Cloud walked out and said with a smile. However, this was indeed unexpected. It was quite a strong attack, but it was still broken like that. It messed up the plan. Elder East Cloud, what was the original plan? Tianyun smiled faintly. Fire Lotus was injured by the attack, and she brought you to escape. Hide in a cave, and reveal all sorts of precious treasures at the same time. Let's see if you would be tempted and run with them. Getting killed by the Fire Cheelant's attack isn't your fault. Some people will take the treasures and run. They won't prioritize saving people, and instead destroy the corpses. Elder East Cloud shook his head, and a fierce look flashed across his eyes. Clearly, he had encountered such a situation before. Tianyun felt helpless. Wasn't this a trap? It was equivalent to luring him to commit a crime. If it was anyone else who saw someone injured and on the verge of death, they would have easily taken the treasures and left. This was a test of human nature. Should he insist on saving them and leave? Even if he was on the verge of death, he had to save him first. Instead of secretly taking a few treasures, destroying the corpses, or even abandoning the people. Little junior brother, I know what you're thinking. In the eyes of the outside world, our God Creation Palace is a God Creation Palace that deliberately makes things difficult for newcomers. We just want a sincere companion who can trust others with his back. Instead of scheming against each other, and being jealous of each other. We are a family. We help and support each other. Senior brother High Dragon's expression was solemn. The others also nodded. There was no discrimination or mockery. Instead, they huddled together. They could only help and support each other. This was how a true senior brother should be. Instead of scheming against each other and stabbing each other in the dark. This was the attitude that Tianyun admired the most. He wanted this kind of feeling. There was no discrimination, and being able to help each other was the best choice. It was not like some sects, where from the moment they joined, they had to scheme against each other. If one surpassed the other by just a little, the other would think of ways to belittle them or stab them in the dark. This kind of sect would not last long. There were too many scheming against each other. How could they develop? Therefore, he would not casually join any faction. Even if he did, he would at most stay for a period of time. It was impossible to stay for long. Now the God Creation Palace was very suitable for him. It could even be said that they were very united. From the rumors, it was indeed difficult for newcomers. The tests were very difficult, but ability was only one part of the test. The real test was to test one's heart. It didn't require a particularly heaven-defying ability, just a good foundation. After all, no matter how extraordinary a fellow disciple was, if he was always high up and did not care about anyone, then what was the use of having him? Although many factions would rather have a strong disciple than a bunch of ordinary ones, for this place, what they needed was a sincere senior brother. This way, when they went out to fight, they could trust their backs. At this time, senior sister Fiery Lotus had already appeased the Flame Cheelan. They looked very close, and it could even be said that they had a master-servant relationship. After a simple exchange, senior sister Fiery Lotus walked over and asked, "Little junior brother, did you see through it long ago?" "Not really." Tianyun had a serious expression. In fact, he had seen through it long ago. If he could not even see through these tricks, he would be too easily fooled. However, he did not say it out loud to comfort them. If he had known from the beginning, he did not know what kind of blow they would have received. "Is that so?" Senior sister Fiery Lotus nodded and chose to believe him. "Oh right, your senior sister Fiery Lotus is not so frivolous. She is usually very strict. If you casually tease her, be careful of getting burned. Senior brother High Dragon laughed and said, "It's just that she has to sacrifice herself in every test. Otherwise, how can we choose a sincere junior brother to join us?" Senior sister Fiery Lotus rolled her eyes at him and reached out to caress the flame Qilin. She smiled faintly and said, "Little junior brother, you have passed our test perfectly this time. We welcome you to join our God's creation palace." "That's right, you passed perfectly. You passed all 3 tests with ease. It can be said that you pass with the best results in history." All of them cheered for Etienne's addition. Elder East Cloud, aren't you going to treat us? Senior brother High Dragon looked at Elder East Cloud and smiled. "Sure, let's go." Elder East Cloud reached out to pat on Etienne's shoulder and smiled. "Let's go. To celebrate the newcomer joining the God's creation palace, I will treat all of you to Drunken Stars for a drink." Drunken Stars for a drink? Elder East Cloud is really generous. I have never seen you treat us in the past. Cough cough, that was in the past. Now Tianyan is rather capable and has the best results in history. Can we not celebrate? Elder East Cloud's face was beaming. How could he not be happy to recruit an all-round genius? If he was happy, he would definitely be willing to pay a huge price for a trip to Drunken Stars. The rest could not refute this point. Among them, Senior Brother High Dragon reached out and placed his hand on Etienne's shoulder. He smiled and said, "It is all thanks to Junior Brother Tianyan that we have the fortune to eat this time. Let's go celebrate together." Let's go celebrate together. Chapter 1088. Under Elder Dongyan's lead, they flew directly to Drunken Fanqing. Drunken Fanqing was not very far from the God Creation Palace. Through the teleportation formation, they only needed to teleport to 2 places to reach Drunken Fanqing. As the name suggested, Drunken Fanqing was actually a good place full of restaurants. There was good wine everywhere, and there was even delicious food to enjoy. Basically, many disciples could come here to relax after completing their missions, or when they were worried. When they arrived, Etienne was indeed shocked by Drunken Fanqing's situation. Drunken Fanqing was filled with the rich fragrance of wine. Even he wondered if he had entered a wine pot. Otherwise, how could it be so fragrant and sweet? Although he did not enter a wine pot, it was almost the same as entering a wine pot. It was not the wine that brought such a rich fragrance, but the Drunken Fanqing trees here. The tree trunks seemed to be filled with wine. Otherwise, why would the fragrance be constantly drifting out? In reality, it was not that there was wine in the Drunken Fanqing trees, but that there was a lot of wine buried under the roots of the Drunken Fanqing trees. Every restaurant was surrounded by Drunken Fanqing trees, so they could not casually dig down. Otherwise, they would definitely be broken by the boss here. Through the Drunken Fanqing trees, they could not only add a rich and sweet taste to the wine, but they could also attract customers. "We're here. Let's go to this Apricot Rain restaurant." Elder Dongyan pointed. "Apricot Rain restaurant. Elder Dongyan, this is no longer as simple as bleeding, right?" Senior Brother High Dragon and the others exclaimed. "In the past, when we joined, you were not so generous. Isn't this a little too biased?" "Ahem, this is not biased. You guys have been working hard all this time. Can't I reward everyone a little?" Elder Dongyan said while waiting for them. "Hee, Elder Dongyan is still the most generous. Then let's go and drink a few pots of wine." They all laughed and rushed to Apricot Rain restaurant. The atmosphere was very harmonious. Etienne smiled at the side and followed them in. This atmosphere was really good. These were the fellow disciples of the same sect. "Little junior brother, you really can't tell?" Senior sister Fire Lotus couldn't help but ask. Looking at senior sister Huolien's doubtful gaze, Etienne thought for a while before nodding and saying softly, "I can see one thing. Senior sister Huolien's acting is a little bad. It's not natural enough." His voice was so soft that only the 2 of them could hear him. After hearing this, senior sister Huolien's beautiful eyes were filled with innocence. "Is it really that bad? Can you tell so easily?" "This is a little exaggerated. It's fine for others, but I see more details. For example, it's clearly my mission for you to take the lead." "Why did you take the lead?" Moreover, you're even exchanging glances with the flame Qilin. It's hard not to know. Yi Tianyun said helplessly. In the future, senior sister Huolian, you should make a detailed plan. That way you can be foolproof. Senior sister Huolian suddenly laughed. Are you saying that I'm not natural enough in battle? You didn't find anything wrong with the others? That's right. There's just a little problem with the battle. Yi Tianyun smiled. That's great. I'll improve in the future. Thank you for reminding me. I almost lost my confidence. Senior sister Huolian smiled happily and patted his shoulder. Speaking of which, you pushed me away and spoke so righteously. It's really attractive. If there's a chance, I'll introduce a sister to you. There's no need for that. Yi Tianyun quickly waved his hand. There's no need for that. It's good to get to know each other. Senior sister Huolian smiled. Let's go drink. Seeing that she had relaxed, Yi Tianyun shrugged. In fact, he had seen it from the beginning. However, seeing that senior sister Huolian was so conflicted, he must have said something. Otherwise, she would have gone crazy with her questions. The others saw that senior sister Huolian's mood suddenly became better. They did not know what was going on. Then they entered the Apricot Rain restaurant. As soon as they entered, they saw that there were apricot trees everywhere. They looked yellow and beautiful. Some were even planted in the air. Dense apricots fell from the sky. It really looked like a rain of apricots. They did not expect that this kind of ordinary fruit would become a theme here. Elder Dong Yin is here. I haven't seen you in a long time. At this time, the owner walked over with a smile. It's been a long time. Give us a private room. Elder Dong Yin waved his hand. No problem. Please follow me. The owner led the way. As an elder, Elder Dong Yin naturally had to lead the way. The group followed. When they were about to enter the private room, they passed by a private room and heard a surprised voice. Isn't that Elder Dong Yin? Why are you so generous this time? Why did you invite so many people to drink? Everyone turned their heads to look, and what they saw was also an old man, slowly tasting the wine with the three of them. When he saw them, his eyes were filled with mockery, but more than that, there was disdain. Yi Tianyun noticed that this person's clothes were similar to Elder Dong Yin's. This meant that he was also an elder. Of course, the Hall of Gods had more than one elder. However, the situation was very different. There were also internal conflicts. Every elder had a different management style. Elder Dong Yin liked to be united. The foundation could be a little weak, but the character had to be up to standard. So it's Elder Xiao Tian. I was wondering who it was. I'm generous and like to invite disciples from my side. Is there a problem? Elder Dong Yin laughed coldly. Not really. After all, the money is yours. How you waste it is your business. If there's a human too. TSK. Elder Dong Yin is really regressing. You even accepted a human as a disciple. What does this look like? A garbage collection center? Elder Xiao Tian did not mince his words. He directly said that Elder Dong Yin specialized in collecting garbage. Everyone was instantly enraged. Among them, senior brother Yulong stood out and smiled faintly. Elder Xiao Tian, speaking of which, your disciple seemed to have lost like a dog in front of us. He was barking as he walked. Did he really think he was a stray dog? Elder Xiao Tian's face darkened. He waved his hand, and a few chopsticks pierced towards senior brother Yulong. They were quickly blocked by Elder Dong Yin. Elder Xiao Tian, what is the meaning of this? Elder Dong Yin said with a cold gaze. Nothing much. Elder Dong Yin, you should properly manage your disciples. When the elders are talking, the disciples should not interrupt. Don't you know this kind of etiquette? Elder Xiao Tian laughed coldly. Don't worry. We still know this kind of etiquette. However, the disciples I recruit are my own business. It has nothing to do with you. Elder Dong Yin said coldly. That's right. So what if we recruit any clans? They are all our juniors. Yes. They are all our juniors. Chapter 1089. It was rare for Yi Tianyun to be so open. From the exchange of words with Elder Xiao Tian, he knew that this group of people was sincere. As long as they were determined, they would not change their minds. However, it was obvious that the two elders of the same deity palace had completely different ideas. One was biased towards recruiting geniuses, while the other focused on character. He originally thought that the deity palace would be a pure land, but it seemed like only Elder Dongyun had such an idea. Elder Dongyun had a different idea, and he was not as extreme as Elder Xiaotian. There were more people like Elder Xiaotian, and it was survival of the fittest. They had to choose the cream of the crop, not just the cream of the crop. Every single one of Elder Eastcloud's disciples was outstanding, but they were still far from the level of super geniuses and elites. As for Elder Xiaotian, he only recruited those with great potential and were considered elites. Elder Xiaotian looked at them and smiled contemptuously. What a joke! In the entire deity palace, you have the fewest people. In the deity palace's trials, your rankings are quite low. This is because of Elder Dongyun's good leadership, or else you wouldn't have gotten such good results. Elder Dongyun's face turned green and white, and he did not look good. It was undeniable that Elder Xiaotian was speaking the truth. Because he was too stubborn about character and unity, there were very few cultivators who passed. Some had amazing talent, but their character was not up to standard, so they were immediately eliminated. Those who were eliminated naturally joined other elders, which meant that their resources were continuously flowing in. On the other hand, Elder Dongyun had not had a single newcomer join for several years, or even hundreds of years. It was not that no one came to take the trial, but that no one passed every time. The contents of the trial were too insane for them. Most people who had cultivated to this level were more selfish in their hearts. Suddenly becoming tolerant and associating with the weak was something they couldn't do. As time went by, the result was that no one joined in. When Yi Tianyan came, no one lined up, and that was the case. The transportation portal that he headed for led to the area managed by Elder Dongyun. So naturally, he met Elder Dongyun. As for the other paths, they would have to face different elders. In the long run, Elder Eastcloud's reputation grew more and more ferocious. In the end, no one came to sign up. This was the most awkward part. Elder Dongyun's actions were clearly correct, but most cultivators did not want to be associated with weaklings. Or perhaps he didn't like this feeling of restraint. Everyone had their own thoughts. Yi Tianyan liked this feeling. At least he wouldn't be stabbed. This is my matter. There is no need for Elder Xiaotian to worry so much, Elder Dongyun said in a deep voice. Of course, that's your business. However, if the other shrines were to compete, it wouldn't just be your business, but the entire shrine of God's business. When the time comes, I wonder what the palace master will think if your people drag us down. Elder Xiaotian sneered. Every divine palace had a palace master, who was mainly the existence of the entire divine palace. Usually, they wouldn't appear, and would be managed by many elders. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't come out. I know what I'm doing. With that, Elder Dongyun admitted that he was in the wrong and led the disciples to the private room in front. When they sat down, Senior Brother High Dragon was extremely displeased. Elder Dongyun, that Elder Xiaotian is too much. I'm not afraid of them at all. Even if it's a competition of geniuses, we have many here. Just Huolian and I alone are enough to suppress that bunch of idiots. All of them didn't even have the mood to drink anymore. They felt extremely sullen. No one liked to be slapped in the face, especially in front of their own elders. It was even more displeasing. So far, what he said is indeed the truth. If you want to retaliate against him, the best way is during the competition in the palace. All of you must fight hard for me. Elder Dongyun said through gritted teeth. He wanted to make a move, but fighting between elders was also not allowed. Private fights were not allowed. Especially two Sir God cultivation powerhouses. If they were to fight, drunken Fanching would explode. I will definitely fight hard and beat them to death. What I hate the most are those high and mighty fellows who look down on everyone. I admit that my talent is lacking, but don't I work hard? I believe that sooner or later, I'll be able to catch up to that bunch of fellows. That's right, talent can't compare. But can they look down on us like this? If they have the capabilities, then don't cultivate. A bunch of arrogant and conceited fellows. Each and every one of them started drinking furiously. The wine that they drank did not have any taste at all. like cows chewing on peonies. Each and every one of them was filled with righteous indignation. Tianyan lightly drank the fine wine that was served, narrowing his eyes slightly, thinking about something. At this time, a wave of jubilant cheers came from downstairs and started to liven up, drawing their attention. As they looked down, a fighting arena was set up at no idea when. The Apricot Rain Inn was very spacious. Setting up a fighting arena was not a big problem. Welcome everyone. Today is the same as in the past. There's a special program. As long as you all send people over to fight, if they win, drinks are all waived. Of course, those who aren't coming down to fight can just place a bet like in the past. The Apricot Rain Inn's manager stood on the fighting arena and explained the situation here to the numerous guests. The Apricot Rain Inn was a little special. In this world where martial arts reigned supreme, the word fighting was naturally indispensable. The Apricot Rain Inn set up the fighting arena here as well as special activities. If they won, they would receive a reward of waiving drinks. If they didn't like it, they could place a bet. It could be considered a small prize. This kind of livening program was pleasing to the eyes. Actually, it was basically just placing a bet. The banker was naturally the Apricot Rain Inn. It was undoubtedly more profitable to earn extra money from this place. This is our agent. Who's interested in challenging him? The manager pointed to the agent he sent up. His cultivation was rather strong, having reached the 6th level of the Lord of Heaven. Those who come up to challenge cannot have a cultivation that is too high. The highest cannot be higher than the 1st level. Otherwise, I'll lose my life. As for those with low cultivation, there's no need to worry. With their gazes shifted, the crowd's mood eased a little. They all looked down at the situation below the stage. Very soon, there would be a customer challenging them. This was a place where drinks were waived. How could they not give it a try? The drinks here were rather expensive. If they could drink for free, why not? Chapter 1090. Before the battle began, everyone began to place their bets. Everyone's bets were different, but they all had their bets. Some bet on the guest, some on the fighter. It all depended on their preferences. Let's place our bets. Who do you choose? I choose the guest. Choose the guest? I feel that the agent is slightly stronger, so it's possible that he will win. I feel that the guest is stronger. He's even stronger than the fighter. Senior brother Hydreigon and the others were discussing who to bet on. They had some free time on their hands, and they were drinking now. How could they not liven things up? Not only them, even Elder Dong Yun began to place his bets. He wanted to earn as much as he could since he had nothing to do here. Soon they all placed their bets. The waiter collected the bets and settled them when they left. Junior brother, which one do you favor? Senior sister Fire Lotus asked. I favor the fighter. His cultivation is lower than the guest's, but his foundation is stable. Especially his strength. He's definitely an existence that can crush his opponent. He doesn't need too much technique. He can defeat his opponent with just his strength. Tianyan analyzed simply. There was actually more detailed information, but he didn't say it out loud. If he said it out loud, it would definitely scare senior sister Fire Lotus. He could even see the opponent's martial arts, overall strength, and weaknesses. Wouldn't that be scary? With the appraisal eye, there was nothing he couldn't see through. Does that doja look very powerful? I feel that his aura is a bit weak. He doesn't seem to have enough explosive power. Someone interrupted. This is hiding his strength. If it's so easy to see through, why would the shopkeeper send someone up? He's not doing charity. He's here to win money and create a situation where he'll lose. Tianyan smiled faintly. His further analysis made everyone feel that it made sense. However, some still felt that the guest would win. Let me think about it. I'll still bet on the fighter. Me too. Let's listen to little junior brother. It sounds quite reasonable. I'm firm on my choice. I feel that the guest will win. I've seen the guest win before. Sometimes I still make a mistake. Some people chose to believe in Tianyan, while others chose not to. Actually, it was not a big deal. They all believed in their own judgment, and felt that their guess would not be wrong. Then, I will bet 1,000 star stones on Doja. Tianyan spent a lot of money. He didn't spend too much, but he was just playing around. There was no need to spend so much. Soon everyone finished placing their bets. Then they began to fight crazily. In the beginning, the warrior was suppressed for a short while. Then, the warrior suddenly exploded and waved his arms wildly, ruthlessly throwing his opponent away and winning the match. That agent really won. That's really godly. That power is really hidden and exploding at the critical moment, catching the opponent off guard and throwing him out. Those who had placed their bets with Tianyan were all smiling, while those who had lost had bitter expressions on their faces. If there was no profit to be made, he would definitely have a bitter expression. Little junior brother, you've really guessed correctly. Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled and clapped her hands happily. She had listened to Tianyan and placed her bet on the warrior. Tianyan smiled knowingly. Unless the opponent admitted defeat on purpose, he would definitely not make a wrong judgment. Soon it was the turn of the next batch. The warrior went down to rest. This time, senior sister Fire Lotus continued to ask, Little junior brother, what about this round? Who do you think will win? Is it the warrior? I think the warrior is quite powerful. His cultivation is higher than his opponent's, and his equipment is also better. Everyone looked at Tianyan, waiting to see what he would say this time. Judging from his eyes, it was definitely the warrior who was powerful. As for the guest, he was just average. This time, the guest can win unless he admits defeat on purpose. Tianyan smiled. His cultivation is lower than the warrior's, but his foundation is there. I can still feel the aura of flames from him. It is very likely that he has the power of demonic fire. When used together, there will be unexpected effects. Amazing! Little junior brother, you can see that the opponent has demonic fire? Senior sister Fire Lotus covered her mouth in surprise. This is just a feeling. Whether it is accurate or not, that is another matter. Tianyan smiled. Okay, I will trust you this round. I will bet 5,000 star stones. Senior sister Fire Lotus bravely bet 5,000 star stones. This was not a lot, but it was definitely not a small amount. If they lost, it would be quite painful. Senior sister Fire Lotus, you are really bold. You trust little junior brother so much? They all felt that it was very strange. It is okay. It sounds reasonable. Do you want to bet with me? Senior sister Fire Lotus smiled. Let's try. I will listen to little junior brother. I will pass. It seems that the warrior is a bit stronger. I will choose the warrior. Some of them continued to choose with Tianyan, while others chose the warrior. Their choices were still different. Soon the match started again. Tianyan's judgment was not wrong at all. The guest used demonic fire and martial arts to easily defeat the opponent. There was no difficulty at all. It was a complete victory. God, it is true. Little junior brother, you are really amazing. Your foresight is really better than ours. I won less. If only I bet more. They were both happy and worried. They did not expect that Tianyan's judgment would be correct twice in a row. It was really shocking. If it was a blind guess, there would be a 50-50 chance. However, Tianyan's analysis was very accurate. He knew what trump card the opponent could use. That was another matter. Little junior brother, I've earned again. It's all thanks to you that I can earn so much. Senior sister Huolian smiled until her eyes turned into slits. This is all your choice. It has nothing to do with me. I was just saying casually. Don't blame me if you lose. Tianyan smiled. Then it was the third match. All of them looked at Tianyan, hoping that he could give an accurate answer. 2 consecutive wins. How could they not look forward to it? From what I see, the guest has a higher chance. Buy the guest. Buy. If you don't buy, you are not a disciple of the Temple of Gods. That's right. I will buy the guest. I will bet 5,000 star stones. Before Tianyan finished speaking, the people behind him had already placed their bets in a frenzy. Other than a few who did not buy, most of them chose to buy. Chapter 1091. Up until now, No one had ever heard of the shopkeeper deliberately arranging for them to lose, so no one was worried about this. If they were discovered, the apricot rain house would be scolded to death. That wasn't a problem. The most important thing was whether he could make an accurate judgment. Only by pointing out the good points could he have a higher chance of winning. If Tianyan could point out the opponent's good points, they believed him even more. That prompted them to place their bets. They believed in his choice and treated him as a godly diviner. Soon, the third round was decided. Tianyun's choice won. The result shocked them again. They didn't believe it before, but now they did. If the first and second times were coincidences, what about the third time? The third time was no longer a coincidence. The key was that he had pointed out the opponent's good points. It couldn't be a coincidence. That's great. We won again. If I had known, I would have placed a bigger bet. I would have earned more. Yeah, but it's okay. We can continue to bet. As long as Little Junior says it, we will place a bigger bet. It's a pity that the upper limit is 10,000 star stones. Otherwise, I would have bet more. They didn't just have a few star stones. Some had hundreds of thousands of star stones. But the upper limit was 10,000. If it was too high, the apricot rain house wouldn't be able to afford it. Although they were confident in the people they sent, it didn't mean they were absolutely confident. They were in the heavenly spring divine territory. There were so many geniuses. If a heaven-defying genius appeared, and someone else bet tens of millions of star stones, the apricot rain house would lose everything. The upper limit of 10,000 star stones was a good number. It wasn't high or low. To put it bluntly, it was just a simple entertainment. They couldn't lose too much. Of course, if too many people placed bets on the agent, the manager would make the agent lose. Otherwise, he would lose a lot of money. They just had to pretend. This time, the two are evenly matched. Their abilities are about the same. I can't estimate it. Tianyun spread his hands helplessly. Their abilities were about the same. If they fought, they could only rely on their experience to win. Tianyun could tell. Their abilities were about the same. The appraisal I couldn't tell. Evenly matched. All of them looked disappointed, which made things even more awkward. If they were evenly matched, even an elder wouldn't be able to tell. One could see his experience and various other aspects of ability, but who could see his combat experience? Soon after, they could only place a bet and treat it as a casual bet. Soon the result was out again. It was Doja's victory. The two of them were indeed evenly matched, and Doja had almost lost. It just so happened to verify Tianyun's words. The two of them were evenly matched. It was hard to say. What about this round? Who will win? They looked at Tianyun expectantly, wanting to hear what Tianyun had to say. I think the agent will win. The guest's cultivation is still one level higher, but this agent is stronger. It looked very ordinary, but it was a speed martial art. Under the rule of speed, he will be able to win this round. Tianyun quickly deduced. Well said. Speed is the only thing that can't be defeated. Then I'll bet on him. 10,000 star stones. Me too. I'll bet 10,000 star stones. They all fought to place their bets, which really scared Tianyun. You guys are making things very difficult for me. If I lose, won't I have to take the blame? Tianyun felt very helpless. After all, this wasn't a small amount. It's okay. If we really lose, we won't blame you. Anyway, you let us earn quite a lot before. At most, we'll just lose it back. That's right. We chose it ourselves. Who can say for sure? They all smiled. Even if they really lost, it could only be said that it was a little more unexpected. I said that the guest will win. At this moment, Elder Xiao Tian walked out, his gaze sharp. I didn't expect Elder Dong Yin to have such a blind disciple. This round is clearly the guest's win. You don't even know who this guest is? He is a great genius of the Spear Palace. His spear art is like a shadow. Who can dodge his ultimate spear art? What kind of speed can dodge his spear art? His three disciples also walked out. The wooden tokens in their hands represented that the person they bet on was the guest. A genius of the Spear Palace? I remember now. He is the Shadow Lord of Heaven of the Spear Palace. His spear art is indeed impressive. One of them suddenly remembered the identity of this person, causing everyone's expression to change. From this, it could be seen that this person was quite famous. On the other hand, that doja wasn't so famous. It could even be said that he was unknown. Who cares who he is? I believe in little junior brother's judgment. That doja will win. That's right. Doja will win. What Spear Palace genius? Can't the person invited by the shopkeeper be a genius? That's right. Doja will definitely win. What blind eyes? I think you are the real blind one. None of them changed their expressions. Instead, they all supported Yi Tianyun's judgment. When facing an enemy, they had to stand on the same side. Elder Xiaotian, how we choose is our business, right? Elder Dong Yun said indifferently. Of course it's your business. It's just that you have placed all your hopes in the hands of a human. It's really funny, and you have even thrown 10,000 star stones at each of them. Elder Xiaotian said indifferently. Just watch. That Shadow Lord of Heaven is the true winner. Elder Xiaotian had such confidence because he naturally knew the background of this Shadow Lord of Heaven. Otherwise, how could he have such confidence? Yi Tianyun didn't say anything. He couldn't be bothered to refute. He had observed this Shadow Lord of Heaven before. His abilities were indeed not bad. However, from a comprehensive point of view, he was naturally inferior to that doja. Very soon the battle began. The Shadow Lord of Heaven's spear was indeed like a dragon. Every spear strike was accompanied by a shadow. It was as if the shadow was entangled. However, the doja was even more domineering. The long sword in his hand flickered with a bright light. Most people couldn't see it, and it had already slashed the Shadow Lord of Heaven. Following that, he displayed an even more magnificent sword technique. It was so dazzling that they couldn't see it clearly. This speed was really too fast. They had never seen a sword technique of this level reach a level that even they couldn't see. In the blink of an eye, it was unknown how many tens of thousands of swords had been stabbed out. The Shadow Lord of Heaven was forced back again and again. Finally, under the piercing of a sword, the Shadow Lord of Heaven was sent flying. Complete defeat, a complete and utter defeat. They didn't expect that the great genius of the Spear Palace would be so easily defeated. He was beaten to the point that he couldn't even fight back. It was really as Yi Tianyun had said. Only speed could not be defeated. It was an existence that could crush others. Chapter 1092. Elder Xiaotian's face was not swollen, but the crowd felt that his face was really swollen. Just a moment ago, he was so sure that the agent would lose. With the genius of the Spear Palace, the opponent would definitely lose. Now he was slapped in the face very hard. He did not know who was blind, but he was the one who was blind. He could not see it. Yi Tianyun had exposed the real situation. Elder Xiaotian was so embarrassed that he wanted to die. That's great. That agent really won. That sword technique was too fast. I could barely see it. Is there such a person in our heavenly spring divine realm? That's right. It's the first time I've seen such a fast attack. He looks very unfamiliar. If he had such amazing sword techniques, he would be very famous. No matter what, we won. 10,000 star stones. Now it's doubled to 20,000 star stones. We really earned big. All of them cheered. But most of them wanted to see Elder Xiaotian make a fool of himself. Elder Dong Yun naturally would not let go of this chance. He smiled at Elder Xiaotian. TSK, Elder Xiaotian, your eyes are really good. What Spear Palace will win? Now, a dozen of us earned more than 100,000 star stones in one go. Although it's not a lot, it's entertainment. It's good to win. Elder Xiaotian glared at them, and even more at Yi Tianyun. He did not expect to make a fool of himself. He did not know how to retort. Who asked him to be so full of himself? He could not change the situation no matter what. Hey, isn't that the new super genius of Sword Palace, Sword Rain Lord of Heaven? I didn't expect the shopkeeper to come and be a fighter. A new member? No wonder I have never seen him before. So he's the new genius of Sword Palace. Rumor has it that he's the #1 sword genius of Sword Palace in 1,000 years. The audience below immediately began to discuss. and only then did the people above know the origins of the agents. The number one sword genius of Sword Palace in 1,000 years. Compared to Shadow Lord of Heaven, he was naturally much stronger. The Shadow-like Lord of Heaven was at most ranked above average in the Spear Palace, but the Sword Rain Lord of Heaven was the number one swordsmanship genius in 1,000 years. The abilities he displayed far surpassed the Shadow-like Lord of Heaven. When Elder Xiaotian heard this, his face turned green and white. This was because he was not well informed enough. If he had known, he definitely wouldn't have said such a thing. In the end, he was blind. Little junior brother, you're really too amazing. You even saw through this. You're really our lucky star. You've just joined, and you've already made us a fortune. Yes. We all suspect that you're from the Heavenly Trigram sect. Only the Heavenly Trigram sect can deduce that. Heavenly Trigram Gate? It can't be right. If he was from the Heavenly Trigram sect, would he join the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm? They all looked at Yi Tianyun, waiting for Yi Tianyun's answer. Heavenly Trigram Gate? I'm not from the Heavenly Trigram sect. I was just casually guessing. It's just luck. Yi Tianyun was humble. The Heavenly Trigram sect they were talking about was actually a hidden faction. It wasn't considered a God Realm faction. It was just an extremely secretive sect. It was said that even third-grade factions didn't dare to provoke them. He guessed 4 rounds correctly. No one would believe it if he said it was luck. They all laughed. They felt that this new junior brother was more and more pleasing to the eye. A human, and the Heavenly Trigram sect will accept him? That's just daydreaming. Elder Xiaotian said coldly. Since you're so accurate, Elder East Cloud, why don't we go down and have a spar? Let's see if we're right. He was really angry and wanted to get back some face from Elder East Cloud. Let's have a spar. Do you think we're afraid of you? Senior brother High Dragon and the rest had wanted to do this long ago. They kept saying that they only accepted trash. Then, let's have a spar to see who was the real trash. Elder East Cloud did not even open his mouth, and they were already fighting to have a spar. Yi Tianyun looked over. The 3 people that Elder Xiaotian brought over also had a feeling of eagerness to give it a try. The cultivation of the 3 of them were not low. They were all at the 5th level of the Lord of Heaven or above. They were considered to be relatively strong. The disciples that Elder Xiaotian invited over to drink would definitely not be simple. If they were too ordinary, it would really be a slap in the face. Elder Xiaotian, since you want to have a spar, that's no problem. How do you want to spar? Elder East Cloud naturally would not admit defeat. He felt that there was no lack of geniuses on his side. They would not be the slightest bit inferior to the other side. Of course it's to go down and have a spar. We'll send out 1 person, and you guys will be sent out by that kid. Don't you guys believe in his judgment? Then let him choose. How about it? Elder Xiaotian looked at Yi Tianyun. He wanted to get back some face in disguise. However, going against a junior was really not the bearing of an elder. Elder Xiaotian really did not have any bearing to speak of. No matter who the opponent was, getting back some face was the most important thing. Everyone looked at each other. They did not think that there would be such a move. Elder East Cloud did not think too much and said, "No problem. Let him choose. I have no objections. Since he is my disciple, I should believe in my disciple's choice." Senior brother High Dragon, and the others also nodded. They smiled at Yi Tianyun and said, "Little junior brother's judgment is so accurate. I'll let you choose." Yi Tianyun smiled slightly. Elder Xiaotian really knew how to make things difficult for others. He was really small-minded. No problem. Since senior brothers believe in me, then I'll choose. Yi Tianyun looked at Elder Xiaotian and said, "How does this work? 1 round to determine the winner?" Of course it's not 1 round to determine the winner. It'll be best of 3 rounds. How about it? Elder Xiaotian smiled and said, "Otherwise, in order to avoid being bullied by us, I'll give you guys more chances. Of course, I believe that you guys will only send Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven or Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven. Who else can you send?" Elder Xiaotian laughed out loud. At a glance, only Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven could see. The others could only stay at the side as spectators. Oh, I don't think so. Don't worry. I don't need to send Senior Brother High Dragon or Fiery Lotus to deal with your disciple. If I send one of them, it'll be my loss. Tianyun pointed at his own eyes and said, I should say that my eyesight is not good and I made a mistake. How about that? Tianyun's words greatly shocked them. Although they were very unhappy with Elder Xiaotian's words, the strongest among them were Imperial Dragon and Fiery Lotus. If they did not send the two, how could they win? Ha ha ha, what a joke. You said it yourself, Elder East Cloud. Didn't you just say that he'll be in charge of the selection? Elder Xiaotian laughed so hard that he was about to cry. How could the disciple he had brought be ordinary? In his opinion, if it wasn't Imperial Dragon and Fiery Lotus, it would be impossible to deal with them. Yes, he'll be the one to choose. Elder Dong Yun was not the least bit displeased with Tianyun's words. After so many rounds, he believed that Tianyun was absolutely confident. Since he said it, there would be no problem. Chapter 1093. Elder Dong Yun's confidence made Tianyun feel good. What he wanted was this sense of trust. If there was no trust at all, then there was no need to talk about mutual trust. Thank you for your trust, Elder Dong Yun. Tianyun said gratefully. I said I trust you, and that means I trust you. I'm not the kind of person who goes back on his word, especially someone with a big mouth and arrogance. Elder Dong Yun's words had a hidden meaning, and it was obviously targeted at Elder Xiaotian. Elder Xiaotian was exasperated, and he said with a livid face, Then I'll send out the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Who will you send? Just like what you said, we can't send out the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven, or the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven. He wanted to see the other party make a fool of himself. Not sending out the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven, and the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven was simply courting death. To him, this was no different from giving away their lives. All this while only the two of them had some ability, and the rest were nothing special. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, huh? Tianyun looked at him and smiled. Then we'll send out Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. Senior Brother Phoenix Feather is up for this round. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven walked out with a serious expression, but in reality, he didn't have much confidence. He just didn't want to be at a disadvantage in front of Elder Xiaotian again, and he couldn't make a fool of himself. Everyone else was shocked. They didn't expect Tianyun to send out the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's standard wasn't very high, and he could only be considered average. As for the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, his standard wasn't low, and he could even be said to be on the same level as the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven. Elder Xiaotian wouldn't bring out a weak disciple, and he could even be said to be very strong. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, huh? The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's eyes were filled with disdain. The opponent was a level weaker than him, so the result was even less suspense. Alright, can we go down now? Elder Xiaotian couldn't wait to see the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven cripple the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Wait, I have something to discuss with Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. You guys can send someone down first. Tianyun indicated. Alright. Elder Xiaotian gestured for Heavenly Monarch Gold Jade to go down first. As he did, Elder Xiaotian sent a voice transmission. Be more ruthless and cripple him. There's no need to Tian, but cripple of Tian is. Elder Xiaotian, this disciple has the same intention. Heavenly Monarch Golden Jade smiled coldly. He already had this thought for a long time. Since it was a fight, it definitely wouldn't end so easily. If there weren't any problems, it wouldn't be interesting at all. Tianyun and the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven communicated something. After a while, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's face was filled with doubt, and he seemed to find Tianyun's words strange. I understand. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven nodded. Senior Brother Phoenix Feather, I'll leave it to you. Tianyun smiled. No problem. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven was full of confidence, and he walked down the stairs. At this moment, the people below were already prepared. When the manager saw that there were people who wanted to fight, he welcomed them to go up. The next program will be the fight between the guests. Everyone can also bet. The manager immediately announced to let people bet. Little junior brother, what did you say to Phoenix Feather? They asked curiously. Cough cough. Actually, I didn't say much. You guys will see it later. Tianyan smiled faintly, but he didn't say what it was. After fiercely selling suspense, everyone continued to watch with doubt. It seemed that the difference in strength between the two of them was still quite big. Why did Tianyan dare to let the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven go up? There was someone stronger than the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven here, but he didn't choose, and he just had to choose him. As for what exactly would happen, they would have to see the final result. For their own people, they didn't hesitate to bet on the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Everyone bet 10,000 star stones, and they didn't hesitate at all. For their own people, they would definitely strongly support them. The star stones felt like they were free, and they continued to bet. After Elder Xiaotian saw this, he sneered. Truly a foolish person with a lot of money. Even if they believe in their own people, they wouldn't be so brainless to believe. They naturally believed that they would definitely win. It should be said that when Tianyan said that he wouldn't send out the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven and the Fiery Lotus Lord of Heaven, they believed that they would definitely win. Very soon the battle started. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven held a golden long sword in his hand, and the golden light was quite dazzling. This was a golden sword that he had personally forged, and it was definitely compatible with his elemental power. It could erupt with the strongest power. Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, if I attack too heavily, then don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your little junior brother. As soon as he finished speaking, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven had already flown over. The golden sword in his hand shone brightly, and it was as if the Buddha's light had enveloped him, and his whole body flickered with golden light. It looked as if the Buddha's light had shone, and it had enveloped this piece of land, causing all the evildoers to have nowhere to hide. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven similarly took out the flower feather long sword that he had forged, and he flew over, intending to confront the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven head-on. When everyone saw this scene, they shook their heads one after another. This was undoubtedly the most unwise choice, and it was equivalent to dragging himself into the water instead. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's ability had always been stronger than his. If he were to confront it head-on, he would undoubtedly be at a disadvantage. Now that he was confronting it head-on, wasn't he courting death? Haha, is this what you call your eyesight? Elder Xiaotian laughed out loud, and he felt that Tianyan was very ridiculous. Was it his plan to let the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven confront him head-on? Tianyan could not be bothered with him, and the corners of his lips curled into a smile. Everything was within his control, and there was no need for him to worry about anything. At the same time, when the two of them were about to collide, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven's attack suddenly turned downward, and it actually ignored his opponent's attack. It directly swung its sword at the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Countless flying feathers pierced through the long sword, and it was like a dense sword rain that pierced through continuously. You think this rubbish sword rain can break through my defense? You're courting death. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven waved its long sword rapidly, and it broke through the sword rain. However, there was too much sword rain, and it was impossible for it to block all of them. Following that, a small portion of the sword rain pierced through, and then fiercely hit the body of the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. There were many parts of the body that were hit, and there was no problem at all. When one part of the sword rain hit the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's expression changed, and the originally fierce attack suddenly disappeared. What replaced it was the disappearance of the star power, and the attack dissipated. The overbearing attack suddenly dissipated, and no one knew what had happened, including the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. He did not know what he had done. However, the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven did not stop, and it wanted to take advantage of his weakness to take his life. It continued to display countless flying feathers, and they continuously pierced through the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. At this time, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven covered its abdomen, which had been bleeding for some time, and it was obvious that it was a wound caused by the flying feathers. Its face was pale, and it waved its sword with one hand to block, but its momentum was weaker than before, and its star power could not be sustained. Chapter 1094. Despicable. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven covered his waist and kept waving his arms to block the feathers, but his strength was getting weaker and weaker. The wound on his abdomen was like a dam that was releasing astral power. He couldn't accumulate any energy to attack. The Phoenix Lord of Heaven kept pushing him back. He couldn't fight back at all. Theoretically, he should be able to stop the bleeding even if he was injured or ignore the wound and could still fight. However, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven seemed to have withered. He couldn't fight back at all, and could only keep moving back. If this went on, he would lose for sure. Damn it! What's going on? When Elder Shao Tian saw his disciple being forced back again and again, he roared. Don't care about that wound, fight him. He didn't want to lose this round. He just wanted to win 2 out of 3 rounds. He needed to win both rounds, not lose one. What he wanted was complete perfection, not a scar. The Golden Jade Lord of Heaven was pushed back. He wanted to fight back, but he couldn't control himself, and kept moving back. Very quickly, he was sent flying by the Phoenix Feather Heaven Monarch's ferocious attacks. After he fell to the ground, he coughed up blood. Especially the abdomen area, which kept bleeding. More importantly, he could feel the astral power flowing out. He had seen blood before, but he had never seen the power of a meteor. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect the Phoenix Lord of Heaven to win just like that. Let alone the others, even the Phoenix Feather Heaven Monarch herself was dumbfounded. Who would have thought that she would succeed so easily? How could he not be shocked when he defeated an opponent who was stronger than him so easily? Damn it! Elder Shao Tian cursed and quickly flew down to the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. He checked and said in shock, his inner world is damaged. Astral power is flowing out. As a genius, he must have an inner world, and it should be quite complete. The inner world was very important. If it was broken, it would be very destructive. That was exactly what happened. His inner world was broken and it was a mess inside. Under such circumstances, not to mention fighting, it would be good if they could hold on and not explode. You're so ruthless. You actually broke my disciple's inner world. Elder Shao Tian was like a dog as he began to bark wildly. Elder Shao Tian, what is the meaning of this? We all saw the fight just now. I didn't see my disciple being too heavy-handed. It was all normal attacks, and he didn't even try to kill his opponent. There's something wrong with him. He actually dared to slander my disciple. Elder East Cloud also flew down, his expression furious. Not to mention Elder East Cloud, everyone could see this. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven didn't do anything. It was just a very normal attack. It just happened to break through the opponent's defense, and then it became like this. Such irregular attacks just happened to break through. Everything was so coincidental. This was at most an accidental injury. How could it be said that it was intentional? Is this your doing? Elder Shao Tian stared at Yi Tianyin. Everyone was chosen by Yi Tianyin. Other than him, who else could it be? What could I be doing? I was just up there, and then I simply sent out Senior Brother Phoenix Feather. Is there a problem? Yi Tianyin shrugged helplessly. At this time, everyone remembered that the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven was sent down by him. He really succeeded in defeating the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Not only did he defeat, but it could be said to be a complete victory. He directly crushed the opponent. Although it wasn't a perfect victory, at least he won. The process wasn't important. What was important was the result. Elder Shao Tian gritted his teeth. He was just casually saying it. How could he slander him? Moreover, it was his own problem. He couldn't blame others. Then, Elder Shao Tian brought people down to treat their injuries. The inner world was damaged, and it needed to be quickly repaired. Otherwise, if the foundation was damaged, there would be repercussions. When the fight temporarily stopped, everyone came to watch. They were all amazed by Yi Tianyin's judgment. He really succeeded in defeating the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. This is too inconceivable. When I first chose the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, I was worried. Now it seems that I was worried for nothing. That's right. Who would have thought it would be so easy? It was so easy. The opponent didn't even touch the surface of the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven. Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven, what did little junior brother say to you previously? The most important thing had come. Previously, Tianyan had whispered something to him. They were very curious. Now, they could finally get the Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven to say it, and resolve the doubts in their hearts. Little junior brother didn't say anything to me. He just told me to attack with all my strength, and use whatever moves I usually use. However, I need to face him head-on. Don't be afraid. Attack him head-on. The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven said helplessly. That simple? Everyone was shocked. That simple? The Phoenix Feather Lord of Heaven spread his hands and said, I wasn't confident at that time. Anyway, I listened to little junior brother, and used my usual attacks. My attacks couldn't even withstand a single blow from the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. However, a few of my attacks still hit him. They shouldn't have caused any damage to him, but they still easily broke his defense. Little junior brother must have said that because he saw something wrong with the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. The Dragon Lord of Heaven said with a smile. Everyone looked at Tianyan, wanting to get an explanation from him. That's about right. I saw that his body was a bit strange, and his astral power wasn't stable enough. Therefore, I speculated that he must have been injured during his recent cultivation. He could have easily broken his defense with just a slight attack, Tianyan explained. He had easily found the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven's biggest weakness through the appraisal eye. He didn't need to use too much power. He just needed to hit him. But why didn't you just attack the weakness? Someone immediately asked. If I said it and did things too deliberately, the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven would be on guard. As long as we guard against that weakness, we won't have a high chance of winning. Tianyan smiled. Everything was within his expectations. After hearing his explanation, everyone finally knew what was going on. It was all part of his plan. If he had told the Phoenix Lord of Heaven that he had targeted the opponent's weakness right from the start, wouldn't he be telling the opponent that he was going to attack the opponent's weakness? That's amazing. You saw it. We couldn't tell at all. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, but they were still shocked by Yi Tianyan's observation. Even Elder Xiao Tian didn't know about it, but Yi Futian noticed it. It was unbelievable. Yi Tianyan smiled. Everything would be easy as long as he knew the opponent's weakness. Therefore, there was no need to send the powerful Dragon Lord of Heaven. It would be enough to deal with him. Very soon, Elder Xiao Tian returned with a pale face. He said in a deep voice, I'll send Shanyan Lord of Heaven for the next round. Who will you send? Chapter 1095. Everyone looked at Yi Tianyan, wanting to see who he would choose this time. They all looked at each other. There were so many people. Who would they choose? The opponent was the Mountain Lord of Heaven, a rock. Whether it was defense or strength, he was a relatively strong existence. With one punch, he would be easily destroyed. There were very few people present who could compare to the Mountain Lord of Heaven, unless the Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven, or the Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven went up. But they couldn't send the two of them up. This was awkward. They wanted to see who Yi Tianyan would choose this time. Such a troublesome opponent. Could it be that he also had a weakness? Or did he have some other strength that could be used to attack him? Hurry up and choose. If you want to find any problems with the Mountain Lord of Heaven, then save yourself the trouble. His body is strong, there won't be any problems. Elder Xiao Tian sneered. This time he had asked the Mountain Lord of Heaven thoroughly. He didn't want the situation with the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven to happen again. If they lost again, then they would completely lose. Now everyone looked at each other. Was there really no other way? Didn't I choose long ago? The next one to go up will be me. Yi Tianyan walked out and looked at Elder Xiao Tian sharply. You're going up? Elder Xiao Tian was shocked. No matter how they thought, they didn't think that Yi Tianyan would go up personally. This was way beyond their expectations. How strong was Yi Tianyan? He was only a 7th-tier Earth Monarch. He could have broken through to the 8th-tier Earth Monarch, but he wasn't in a hurry. Recently, there were a lot of things to do, so he could only delay it. He didn't break through immediately. Therefore, in the eyes of others, he was at most a 7th-tier Earth Monarch. This cultivation against a 5th-stage Heaven Monarch. Wasn't this courting death? That's right, I'm going up. Is there a problem? Etianyan said calmly. This doesn't seem to be against the rules, right? Of course it's not against the rules. But are you sure you want to do this? Elder Xiaotian suspected that Etianyan had gone mad. There was such a huge gap between their cultivations. Yet he still chose to take the field himself. Elder Xiaotian suspected that he had gone crazy. I'm sure I will, Etianyan said calmly. All right. Elder Xiaotian looked at Elder East Cloud and said, Elder East Cloud, I didn't do it on purpose. He chose it himself. It has nothing to do with me. Elder East Cloud and the others were all shocked. Who would have thought that Etianyan would personally go into battle? With such a huge difference in cultivation, it was easy for problems to arise. We believe in junior brother. Since this is his choice, we have nothing to say. Senior sister Huolian and the others nodded. They didn't try to persuade Etianyan not to do so. Even senior sister Huolian laughed because she remembered something. During the examination, even the flame Qilin was sent flying by him. This was enough to show that his strength was quite domineering. She didn't know how much potential Etianyan had yet to unleash, but his strength definitely wouldn't be weak. Since he could make this request, then he definitely had a chance of winning. Otherwise, why would Etianyan bring it up? Yes, I respect my disciple's choice. Elder East Cloud also said. Elder Xiaotian was shocked. He thought that Elder Xiaotian would try to dissuade him. Who knew that it would be so pointless and really let Etianyan take the field himself? Very well. Since you're so bold, then let me see how strong you are. Elder Xiaotian glanced at the mountain rock Heavenly Lord and sent a voice transmission. You must beat this kid to death. Don't show any mercy. Also, you must be more vigilant. I don't know what that kid is thinking. Go all out if you can. Elder Xiaotian, you're too nervous. This kid's cultivation is so low. At most, he has some tricks up his sleeve. In the face of absolute power, these tricks are all trash. Lord of Heaven was full of confidence in himself. His opponent was so far away from him. If he couldn't even win this, he might as well commit suicide. Since you're so confident, then I'll leave it to you. If you lose. Elder Xiaotian's eyes were cold. He didn't even need to finish his sentence to know what he was trying to say. Lord of Heaven nodded forcefully. He knew that he couldn't lose. Elder Xiaotian cared a lot about his face. He already looked down on Elder East Cloud. If he lost to Elder East Cloud's disciple, where would he put his face? Soon after, they all went up. When they stood on the stage, they all exploded. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, he still sent his disciple up. Wasn't he just giving away money? Ahem, I won't place a bet this time. The situation is a bit special. If the disparity is too great, then it can't be considered a bet. The shopkeeper's words disappointed many customers who wanted to place a bet. Originally, they could have just closed their eyes and placed their bets on Lord of Heaven. They didn't need to choose anything else. Who knew that he wouldn't place a bet? It was really disappointing. The shopkeeper wasn't an idiot. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, if he still placed a bet, wouldn't he suffer a huge loss? He didn't want to suffer such a loss. After all, opening a restaurant wasn't for charity. It was to earn money. It seems like the shopkeeper is taking care of you. If you bet all at once again, you'll suffer a huge loss. Elder Xiaotian didn't forget to give them a cold shoulder. Our little junior brother won't lose. That's right. Don't think that Lord of Heaven can win. Our little junior brother is even more powerful. They all had full confidence in Etianyan. After experiencing all this, they had a deeper understanding of Etianyan. They felt that he was unfathomable and was definitely a powerful cultivator. Powerful? Are you kidding me? Elder Xiaotian shook his head. With such a huge disparity in cultivation, what can a human do? If it were any other race, I would still think that they have a chance. But a human, humph. While they were talking, Etianyan and Lord of Heaven had already started fighting. Lord of Heaven was barehanded. It wasn't that he didn't have a weapon, but his fists were more powerful. His body didn't seem to have any bright spots, but when he swung his huge fists down, it was like a huge mountain pressing down. I'd like to see what tricks you have up your sleeves. Lord of Heaven faced the attack head-on. At the same time, he stared at Tianyan and didn't relax at all. He wanted to see what tricks Tianyan had up his sleeves, such as sneak attacks from the side or some other tricks. Unexpectedly, Tianyan didn't move at all. When he smashed over, Tianyan swung his fist at the same time. Fist against fist. There weren't any tricks. It was a very simple and violent fist against fist. Is he an idiot? Fist against fist, I'm dying of laughter. Fighting fist against Lord of Heaven. This is his ability. Chapter 1096. Rocky Lord of Heaven and Tianyan's fists collided. In the end, Rocky Lord of Heaven was sent flying. This result was unbelievable. Rocky Lord of Heaven was from the giant rock tribe. Most importantly, his cultivation was higher than Tianyan's, who knew that he would still be crushed. This was unbelievable. Rocky Lord of Heaven was sent flying. The thick rock on his arm started to crack. It was obviously shattered by Tianyan's overbearing fist. On the other hand, there was nothing wrong with Tianyan's fist. Apart from taking a few steps back, he was fine. It's really tough. Tianyan smiled. He activated the Dragon God bloodline in his body and circulated it in his body. In terms of strength, he would never lose to anyone. Rocky Lord of Heaven's cultivation was higher than his. But when had he ever been afraid of anyone? From the appraisal eye, he could see that Rocky Lord of Heaven was not as scary as he had imagined. Especially as his cultivation increased, and he absorbed more astral energy from the heavenly tribulation. His physique was greatly strengthened. Even Rocky Lord of Heaven might not be a match for him. What? Rocky Lord of Heaven quickly stopped. He felt the pain on his fist. It was unbelievable. He thought that Tianyan would use some tricks. But now it seemed that there was no trick at all. Tianyan had fought him head-on. Most importantly, he had lost. While he was stunned, Tianyan suddenly stepped on the ground and rushed towards him like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Tianyan's whole body's power was at its maximum, especially his Dragon God bloodline. The effects of his equipment were also activated to the maximum. If not for this, he would not have been able to fight someone of a higher cultivation. After all, his opponent's cultivation was much higher than his. If he did not have other comprehensive strengths, he would not be able to deal with him. What are you waiting for? Tianyan swung his leg and lashed out fiercely. Mountain Lord of Heaven quickly raised his arm to block. Boom! The mountain rock heavenly monarch was sent retreating by the kick. The hard rock wall on the surface of his body immediately caved in, and dense cracks appeared on his arm. Even the powerful defense of the Lord of Heaven could not easily withstand the violent power. This scene shocked everyone. Most of them thought that Tianyan would use some kind of trick or maneuver to trick the Lord of Heaven. Now it seemed that they had been too naive. Tianyan did not need to do that at all. He had just used his most violent strength to smash the mountain rock. The Lord of Heaven. This kid's strength is so strong. He's a human? Even Elder East Cloud and the others were shocked. Although they knew that Tianyan's strength was not weak, they did not expect him to suppress the Lord of Heaven in such a dominating manner. While they were still in shock, Tianyan did not give his opponent a chance to catch his breath. He continued to attack ferociously. He did not use any special moves. He simply used his fists to smash. Don't be arrogant. The Lord of Heaven was also angry. The cracks on his body began to repair rapidly. Soon, a thick rock wall was built on the surface of his body. His strength began to rise rapidly. He completely released the power of the Lord of Heaven. Heaven Shaking Art. Heaven Shaking Art. Tianyan instantly turned into an extremely heavy body. At the same time, he used the Heaven Shaking Art. He increased his fighting strength by 10 times. The power of the planets in his body began to circulate wildly. His body, which did not look very big, was like a huge planet. He charged towards the Lord of Heaven. Boom! The two of them collided, and with a loud bang, the mountain rock heavenly monarch was sent flying. The thick rocks on his body were smashed into pieces. On the other hand, Tianyan was completely fine. He did not even have a scratch on his body. Yi Tianyan was wearing the evil devil godly suit. His defense was so strong. Naturally, he was not afraid of the Lord of Heaven. On the surface, it looked like ordinary clothes. In reality, it was the evil devil godly suit. How could its defense be weak? However, when they collided, they still felt that the other party was quite hard. The Lord of Heaven was not a pushover. His body was also very strong. It was already shocking that he was injured by Yi Tianyan. The giant rock tribe had always had a strong defense. It was a great humiliation to be hit by a human. Mountain Rock, use your weapon. Why are you using your fists? Use your weapon. Elder Xiao Tian, who was below the stage, shouted hurriedly. The Lord of Heaven definitely had a weapon that he could use. He might even be able to use it together to explode with even greater power. However, the Lord of Heaven did not hear him. He continued to use his hard body to collide with Yi Tianyan. He wanted to see who was harder. Damn it. He actually did not listen to me. Elder Xiao Tian gritted his teeth in anger. If the Lord of Heaven used a weapon, his chances of winning would undoubtedly increase greatly. He might even be able to crush Yi Tianyan. However, the Lord of Heaven did not use a weapon. He was about to explode in anger. Elder Xiao Tian, it seems that you do not understand your disciple's heart. As a member of the giant rock tribe, his opponent uses their fists and bodies to hit him. These are the two techniques that he is most proud of. Do you think he will use other techniques? Elder East Cloud laughed coldly at the side. Your disciple still knows the rules and knows what to do. The giant rock tribe was most proud of their fists and bodies. Now that they were being suppressed by Yi Tianyan, how could he admit defeat? Taking out a weapon was equivalent to admitting defeat. Thus, even if he lost, he had to use the most basic techniques to fight to the end. Nonsense. The process is not important. What is important is the result. Elder Xiao Tian did not care that much. He only wanted to win this match. Elder East Cloud shook his head. He could not be bothered with his disciple's thoughts. If he could not even understand his own disciple's thoughts, how could he be a master? However, the Lord of Heaven could not be bothered with him. He continued to use his most primitive abilities to continuously collide with Yi Tianyan. Yi Tianyan also did not use any weapons. He continued to use all kinds of fists to smash. The Lord of Heaven was sent flying again and again. They were both using the same techniques, but the Lord of Heaven was slightly inferior. The Lord of Heaven also used martial arts. Combined with his bloodline defense, he should be able to fight against many opponents of the same level. However, against Yi Tianyan he was filled with a deep sense of powerlessness. He was completely crushed. Under the final punch, the Lord of Heaven was sent flying and vomited blood. When he landed heavily on the ground, he did not faint. Instead, he collapsed on the ground and laughed with tears in his eyes. He never thought that he would lose to a human, an opponent that he could never imagine. You're really tough. Yi Tianyan waved his hand and looked at the Lord of Heaven lying on the rock. He smiled faintly and said, "But thank you for being so persistent in fighting against me. We, the giant rock tribe, will not use any weapons when facing an opponent like this." The Lord of Heaven sat up and said in admiration, "You are the first human that I have met with such a tough body. I admire you." Chapter 1097. Yi Tianyan won this round in the most domineering manner. Previously, Elder Xiao Tian had set the best of 3, and Yi Tianyan's side had won 2 rounds consecutively. There was no need to compete in the remaining round, and he had won it directly. Not only that, but the Lord of Heaven also admired him greatly and vaguely saw him as a friend. How was he still an enemy? He was almost becoming a friend. Elder Xiao Tian, you've lost. Elder Dong Yun looked at Elder Xiao Tian. He was so happy that he almost laughed out loud. Elder Xiao Tian's expression was ugly. He never thought that he would lose to Elder Dong Yun, who was at the bottom of the Hall of Gods. He had always disapproved of Elder Dong Yun's way of doing things. He didn't reply. Instead, he walked over to the Lord of Heaven and said coldly, Mountain, what's the meaning of this? I asked you to take out your weapon just now. Why didn't you do so?" Elder Xiao Tian, our giant rock tribe has our own rules. The other party didn't use any weapons and used our greatest advantage to attack. We can't possibly break the rules. The Lord of Heaven had already crawled up. His injuries weren't very serious. Although he had vomited blood from Etienne's attack, it was only an ordinary injury and not a very serious one. A loser is a loser. What's the point of breaking the rules? You're a loser now. Get out. I won't take you in as a disciple, especially a disciple with such a rotten brain. Elder Xiaotian was completely furious. This meant that Mountain didn't listen to him, so there was no need for him to stay by his side. The Lord of Heaven's body stiffened. He slowly knelt down and said in a deep voice, "That disciple was unfilial. I'm sorry, Elder." With that, he kowtowed 3 times and completely severed all ties with Elder Xiaotian. From now on, the two of them would have nothing to do with each other. Elder Xiaotian coldly snorted. He turned to look at Elder Dongyin and said, "Seems like your new disciple isn't bad. He even knows how to make use of such dead rules. I'm really looking forward to the competition in the palace. When the time comes, I'll see what other skills they have besides strength." After saying that, he waved his hand and left with his people, as well as the defeated Golden Jade Lord of Heaven. Although the Golden Jade Lord of Heaven had lost, he still obeyed Elder Xiaotian's words. This was the main point. Losing wasn't scary. What was scary was not listening to his instructions and losing. That was what he couldn't tolerate the most. After Elder Xiaotian left, they all looked at the Lord of Heaven with sympathy. "Shanyan, Lord of Heaven, why don't you join us?" Etienne walked over and smiled. The Lord of Heaven was not a sinister person. He had always been straightforward. This could be seen from the way they talked about rules. This fellow had a one-track mind and had always abided by the clan's rules. Join your side. The Lord of Heaven was stunned. He was originally a disciple of the Palace of Gods. At most, he would just have to change masters. There wasn't much of a problem. Can I really join? He hesitated for a while and finally asked. He still wanted to stay in the Palace of Gods. "There's nothing you can't do. The prerequisite is that you can pass our assessment." The Imperial Dragon of Heaven walked out and grinned. "Your character isn't bad. I admire you. However, you still have to pass the assessment. Otherwise, you won't be able to join." The others smiled and nodded. Although the Mountain Rock Heavenly Monarch was on the same side as Elder Xiaotian, their relationship wasn't too deep, especially when he didn't listen to Elder Xiaotian's words. This made them happy. Some people had their own bottom line. The Lord of Heaven had his own bottom line. Only a cultivator with a bottom line would be able to go further in life. Thank you. The Lord of Heaven was extremely grateful. "I will work hard to pass everyone's assessment. If I can't, I won't have the face to join you. Let's not talk about the assessment for now. Let's drink first." Elder Dongyin was in a good mood. He had just won against Elder Xiaotian. How could he not be happy? They returned to the private room and continued to enjoy the wine. Without Elder Xiaotian, they instantly felt that the wine was especially fragrant and sweet. "Little junior brother, I didn't know that you knew the rules of other clans. If the Lord of Heaven used a weapon, what do you think your chances of winning are?" The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven asked. The others looked over. Even the Lord of Heaven looked over. What if he used a weapon? Etienne slowly put down his wine cup and smiled. "Let's drink. Let's not talk about this anymore." Seeing that Etienne wasn't willing to answer, they could only stop asking. Some felt that he could still win, while others felt that he couldn't. Etienne drank another cup and didn't say anything else. The result was needless to say. Let alone the Lord of Heaven using a weapon. Even if he burned his essence blood to fight him, he wouldn't be the slightest bit weaker. It's about time to improve my cultivation. Things here were temporarily put on hold. The next step was to go to Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land to cultivate and improve his cultivation. Soon things here were over. Through this banquet, their relationship improved a lot. Especially after this duel, they had gained a deeper understanding of him, and the relationship between them had undoubtedly improved by leaps and bounds. After saying that they were going to Heaven Pilfering Sacred Land, they all revealed envious gazes. The Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven, and the others didn't have the chance to go to heaven-pilfering sacred land. It was an extremely strict place and not so easy to go. They needed a lot of contribution points to be able to stay in heaven-pilfering sacred land for a while. For example, if Tianyan wanted to cultivate, he would at most be given a month's time. It was enough to show how precious it was. According to Elder Go Huang's words, Tianyan could look for him once he was ready. If he wanted to go to heaven-pilfering sacred land, he had to go through the approval of these high-level elders. Even Elder Dongyin couldn't do it. Under the guidance of the guards, Zhang Xian soon arrived before Elder Go Huang. There wasn't any trouble this time. It was obvious that Elder Go Huang had left some instructions on the token in order to avoid any unnecessary trouble. This would undoubtedly make things much more convenient. You're finally here. I know about your situation. You just joined the God's Creation Palace and already caused such a huge commotion. Elder Go Huang shook his head and laughed. Furthermore, you even joined Elder Dongyun's camp. It seems like your character isn't bad. Elder Dongyun's side isn't bad. In the past, Elder Dongyun was a super genius. It's just that his personality was different and the cultivation path he took was slightly different. No matter what, he's definitely a good elder. Nothing here could be hidden from the eyes of these elders. As long as he wanted to understand, he would be able to know everything in the next second. Elder Dongyun is naturally a good elder. Tianyan smiled and said, Then Elder Go Huang, I wonder if you can go to heaven-pilfering sacred land now. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.